Good morning, afternoon, and evening. Welcome to Champion Motorsports running for the VWSC 230 kilometers of the Nürburgring for the 1991 Group C season. I'm Ross Smith, kicking things off today. I'm joined in the booth by a couple of special guests today. Here to introduce yourself.
Is that my cue to say hello as well? Hello, everybody. Chris here joining alongside as well before we kick things off. It's going to be an exciting one as well. We had a very exciting race last week at Road America. Now we've flown a couple of thousand miles across the pond and now settled in Germany for the 1991. Big throwback, 31 years old in these cars. And from the last time we were out, it was fantastic. And no doubt we're going to have some fantastic racing here this weekend.
Yes, thank you, Chris. Chris Moborn, of course, joining us here, and Jake Sanson will be in the booth in just a moment. Cars are circulating out on track and getting ready for quali, as stated here. Let's take a look at what we have in store for today and for the future. We'll actually start with future events, kicking off the 230 kilometers. It'll be about an hour and a half or so. And then coming up, we'll switch back to the Modern Series at Fuji for 60 minutes. And then we'll have a short break, and then it's back to Historics for a couple weeks, separated in through October for Manicure. And actually it's back to Modern, a little glitch there, for the 100 minutes of Road Atlanta, mimicking the 10 hours that they run there into sunset. So a lot of exciting stuff coming up. Hope you all be with us for that. The track map, Chris, obviously a pretty famous one from around the world here at Nürburgring. Not the Green Hell, but still a very exciting track indeed.
It certainly is, and there's some very exciting corners around here, including my personal favourite, which is turn 10. Now, if drivers are brave enough, they'll go flat out through there, but that all depends on how much grip they have. If they don't have the grip, well, they're not going to be going through there flat out at all. The first part of the track, very technical, some very tight but quick corners as well, as we work our way down to some of the most iconic tracks in German motorsport here, and joining will be some of the most iconic cars in German racing history as well. So this is building up to be quite exciting. The configuration is slightly different to what we see nowadays. This, of course, is running on the 1991 version of the track, which will provide plenty of changes. We do have some slight elevation changes as well. We do go downhill and we go uphill as well, so that'll be something that the drivers need to take into consideration as well. Plenty of fast swooping lefts and right, so the drivers always have to be on their tippy toes just to ensure they keep their car all in a straight line. But 230 kilometers around here, well, it doesn't sound like a lot, but it certainly is going to be quite an endurance here, looking at least about an hour, if not about an hour and a half here of racing. And well, the drivers are on track. We're ready to go. I'm pretty sure they're ready to go as well, Ross. Well, I say they're ready to go. You should be getting ready to go as well, because obviously you're participating in the race.
I should, yes, and I know that you'll be joined here with Jake in a little bit. So I'll let you guys run down through the championship information, and I'll take off. But before I do, I just want to thank you and everyone else here who's contributing to the success here at Champion Motorsports for VWSC and all the chapters that are involved. So. Good on all of you, and yes, I look forward to kicking things off on track, and certainly with you guys in the booth. Hopefully I'll be able to join you in the end if I manage that top position in class, but it's pretty tight.
Well, we'll keep our fingers crossed for that.
All right, well, I'm heading off.
Now looking.
I'll catch you guys on track. Good luck. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ross, and good luck to yourself as well. Hopefully see you on the top step of the podium, or hopefully a podium finishing position as well. So we're back now to live pictures here. Now, racing here this weekend, we have no less than 6 different cars here, all 6 different manufacturers as well. We've got the Sauber Mercedes C11. Now, what we're looking at right now is the Peugeot 905. The Group C car from 1991. It's a V10 naturally aspirated powered car with 463 horsepower and red lines at 14,000 RPM. It is the highest red line we have here, and it's sort of a moderately average car to drive here. Use the word average very loosely because this car is well, beautiful in a sense. It is absolutely stunning. I wouldn't really call it average, but when it comes to straight line and cornering, it is around average. It's probably not the preferred one. It's the Porsche 962C that would be more preferred, as it's faster in a straight line and cornering, but it certainly isn't the fastest car we have out there. That would go to the honours of the Sauber Mercedes C11, and of course then we have on the opposite end of the spectrum is the legendary Mazda 787B, and what a car it is. And if you haven't witnessed it in real life, you really need to witness it. That rotary engine, the sound it emanates is absolutely incredible. Again, live pictures here. We can have a quick look through who we have here racing with us this weekend. As if my computer screen wants to play nice with me, because currently on track we've had at least 16 drivers pop into the session. Not all 16 have put lap times in. Interesting enough, it shows that Ross Smith has actually done one, so somehow he managed to talk and race at the put in a time at the same time. So big hat tip there to Ross for that. Here we're seeing two of the Porsche 962Cs, Walter de Bruyn and Barry DiMarzio, here again this weekend, racing in one of the Lucky Strike Mazdas. Again, it's the 787B, and here we are riding on board. What a phenomenal view that is as well. It's actually surprisingly large inside the cockpit. It looks actually spacious from this angle as well. You don't look too cramped, although I could imagine the drivers are feeling cramped, kind of settling in there. But in terms of visibility, the 787B does have a lot of it compared to some of the newer cars that are racing currently in this day and age. A lot of yellow's being thrown out in Sector 2. I presume that's just drivers getting used to things. We've actually got a car off by the looks of it, the 12th place car overall as per the timing sheets, and that would be George Angelidis, who is having a slight issue down by the Donlock curve. He's got going again, but well, it looks like last week he's going the wrong way, but that's just how tight that part of the track is actually. But he's got going again. So we're looking at, once again, BrianB DiMarzio in one of the 787Bs, as we said, because George Angelidis is also racing in the Mazda as well, and it looks like Barry just getting to grips here with the car. Now we have a yellow in Sector 1. Now, is that through the first corner by the looks of it? Yes, it is. Let's have a look at all the other cars that we have here this weekend. We've seen the Porsche 962, we've already seen the Mazda. We have the Jaguar XJR14 with a naturally aspirated V8, which redlines at 2,000 RPM less than the Peugeot does. Then of course we have the Nissan R19 CK, and those are the 6 cars that we'll have racing here this weekend. Of course, we don't have 6 drivers, we have a total of 16 drivers here, and it looks like the majority of the field here, well, it's kind of split up. There's only 1 driver in the Sauber Mercedes C11. We've got, by the looks of it, 3 in the Jaguar XJR, actually made that 4 in the Jaguar XJR. There's a handful with the Mazda 787. There is another handful in the Nissan. Actually, no, we've only got 1 Nissan here this weekend, and that is Jason Whitehead for Storm Rider Racing, who will be partaking this race. And there he is, as we speak of him right now, the sole Nissan entry here. Now, just a quick thing to note here, it looks like we don't have any classes here. We don't have the difference between Pro and Pro-Am. It looks like we're all in one category here, so we don't have to look all over the place just to see where battles are happening, because it looks like everybody gunning for that top podium finishing position here in the VWSC historic here. It's a throwback to 31 years ago, some of the most legendary cars in sports car racing. It's amazing to think these cars raced 31 years ago, and I've got to say, they still give today's cars a good run for their money, not just in terms of looks, but of course with sound and everything like that as well. As Jason Whitehead, as he said, just getting to know the track here, getting used to the corners as well, trying to figure out where he shouldn't be going off, losing the most amount of time, as the 16th place car's had a bit of an issue. That is Lubus Roslanka in the Mazda 787B. It looks like he hasn't got going again, so I presume he's actually facing the wrong direction as we speak. With 9 minutes left to go here in the session. As we continue on, it looks like we do actually have classes there, so a big shout out there to the team in the back end there, sorting that out for us. So we do have 3 classes, and we've got C Pro, C Purist, and C Am. So what's the difference between the 3 of them? Well, obviously they are in 3 different classes. They have 3 different colours to denote who is racing in which category. Now, the Purist is for those who, well, they want to take it to the ultimate extreme here. There's no auto clutch. It requires a clutch pedal and a H pattern with a manual throttle bit, manual rev matched downshifts, and they can skip shift with skill. They've of course got to be very careful of that clutch slip, And of course, they will be racing with no assist here in R Factor 2. So really, only the brave will be participating in Purist, and very interested to see Dan Kirby back here again. No stranger to throwing cars in each and every corner of the track. Of course, we missed him last weekend at Road America in the prototypes, the hypercars. But great to see Dan Kirby back here this weekend. In the Purist category, we have 4 drivers. We've got Dan Kirby, Timon Savic, Ross Smith, and George Angelidis. So it looks like Ross Smith, well, his chances of being on the podium and coming back into the booth seems quite high. There's only 4 drivers in his class. But let's go now to the standings in the Purist category. Ben Borman leads the category by just a single point of the man we just spoke about, Ross Smith, both of them racing in the Peugeot 905s. And then a further 14 points back in third overall is Ahmed Abdullah, who unfortunately is not here this weekend looking at the current live timing screen, unless he just hasn't got into the session just yet. George Angelidis and Dan Kirby in the Mazda 787Bs, rounding out the top 5 with 46 and 35 points respectively. But hot on the tail there of Dan Kirby is Manuel Stoll, in the Sauber Mercedes C11. They are tied for points there in 5th. Peter Meyer 7th, with Timon Sovic in 8th. James Andrew 9th, and Steve Carman rounding out the top 10 here. In terms of the team standing, it's Nuki Monsters in the Peugeot 905s who lead the championship with 140 points. They almost have double the points of the Lucky Strike Mazda racing team that of course is running the Mazda 787Bs, with Kowalski Motorsports in the top 3 here in the team standings with the Sauber Mercedes C11s, but a further 17 points adrift. In the pro standings, Jason Whitehead leads with 68 points, but again a very close battle at front here, just separated by 1 single point there between the Nissan R90CK and the Porsche 962C of Walter de Brood. And Ludwig Askenis, who is not here as well this weekend, sits in 3rd position at the moment, further couple of points behind, about 19 points actually behind is Ludwig, with Brian Hall in the Jaguar and Ryan Elderisi in the Nissan R90CK in the top 5. Magnus Dahlgren, Tom Lane and John Uwan there in 6th, 7th and 8th respectively. A couple of points back from Jason Whitehead, with Jacques Vermeulen and Paul J. Venter rounding out the top 10. In terms of the team standing, Storm Rider Racing leading the pack at the moment by just 7 points to Rookie Monsters in their Porsche 962Cs, with the Hall Brothers Racing the Jaguars XJR 14s in 3rd overall in the standings. So it's interesting to see that Elderisi here has 2 wins, but yet he is not at the top of the championship standings there. And that's basically not due to obviously lack of consistency, because he is a proven race winner. It's just that we haven't seen him a lot in the 1991 Virtual World Sports Car Championship from Champion Motorsports here. So unfortunately, despite having 2 wins, he's tumbling down the order here. Now, if only we had some sort of playoff systems like certain American championships, things might be a little different here. As the session still continues on in the background. Here are the AM standings. Eric Mone in the Porsche 962C with 85 points to his name. He's 15 points ahead of John Mayer, and he has 2 wins to his name. Barry DiMarzio without a win here, but still in 3rd overall. So great effort there from Barry. Consistency is always key when it comes to motor racing, and you can win a championship without winning a single race. You just have to make sure that you're in the right position when the checkered flag waves. Tom Mountjoy and Stephen Miller round out the top 5. We're separated by just a single point once again here with Chevet and Leon Gennari in 6th and 7th respectively. Abigail Mayday, who we saw, I think if I'm not mistaken, last time out when we did the 1991 series, in her debut, won in her class. A very valiant effort from Abigail, but unfortunately not here today. She sits in 8th position with Dan Mings and Kern Garling in 9th and 10th respectively. In the team standings though, it is C. Mistral in the Porsche 962C with Lucky Strike Mazda Racing's the Mazdas again in 2nd position, and the gap there is, let's do some quick math, is 7 points separating the 2 of them, is it? No, it's not. It's 8 points separating the 2 of them up front, and with just 31 points trailing the 2 up front is Hardtail Racing with the Porsche 962C. Now, I don't think we have a representative from Hardtail Hardtail Racing here this weekend. So unfortunately, no points to be bagged. Actually, we do. Tom Maxwell is actually here this weekend. So of course, he's looking to score maximum points, but he's going to need the two teams in front of him, the Ursi Mistral and Lucky Strike Mazda Racing. Well, he's going to want them to not finish anywhere close to him, preferably not finish the race at all. But of course, we have 230 kilometres to figure that out. And those are the team standings here for the Championship Motorsports 1991 Virtual World Sports Car Championship standings. And, well, we're looking forward to the start of the races. So as I said, 3 different categories. We've gone through all 3 of them. We've seen that C Purist is not for the faint of heart. Those are for the real... I don't want to say real men, because of course we do have ladies racing here. Let's say real enthusiasts, real racers here, the ones that really want to put themselves to the absolute test there, who are positioned in C Pursuit. Purist, sorry, not C Pursuit. This is Purist on our screen. And then we have C Pro. This is for the faster drivers with auto clutch sequential shifting with a shift delay, and of course they have the option for downshift auto rev matching. They've got the manual throttle blip and no assist as well in R Factor 2. And then the AM category, they would have really used the word slower driver. They say more towards the up-and-coming future stars of sim racing are in the AM category there with the auto clutch sequential shifting with a shift delay, and it looks like the specs are somewhat identical to Pro, because of course they do not have the assist either. Because of course, yes, we are racing virtually, no, we don't have the cars, but we try to make it as real as possible, and the team do a fantastic job setting the entire thing up here to be as real as possible, because of course we have things like damage, we have weather as well active, because of course that played a key role in the race last week as well, especially when it came to tyres and the strategy as well, because a lot of drivers sort of new to the changing of the weather. When we went from a cooler track, sort of gets warmer, it got rapidly warmer only by a few degrees, or better yet, a few points of degrees even. We never really got that massive jump, but we did see drivers starting to really use up more tyres than they actually planned to use them, and that really played in the hands of other drivers, especially when it came to strategy. Fuel mileage is always a strategy that plays in the mind of all the drivers here. When we were speaking to Zalewski last time out, he was on fumes in his on his way to a win in GT AM, and he said if he had 2 more laps he wouldn't have made it there, because of course fuel mileage also a key component here, and of course one of the settings that are active during our Championship Motorsports 1991 Virtual World Sports Car Championship in both the series that we run here. And of course this is going to be another stellar event here that we have on our hands. We have 230 kilometers to get through, but of course before we do that we have to figure out who will be where on track. As Stephen Miller looking a little slow there through turn 10, and then said that earlier in the show there that corner is a very crucial part of this track. Well, all the corners really are, but that part in particular, because if you're very brave, and I can imagine some of the C Purists are going to try it, you can try and go flat out through there, but if you put any wheels off in any direction, or you just dab the brake ever so slightly at the wrong time, you're going off, and of course it can result in devastating results there, and that's the last thing that you want. So the session is officially now come to an end, as all the drivers now will come back into their pit garages. We only have about 5 cars circulating at the moment. Dan Kirby is on a flying lap at the moment. He's going purple through sector 1 at the moment, so no doubt he'll try to do that through sector 2 as well, with a 21.932. Best lap of this session of 1:27.622. Dan Kirby was about 0.3 of a second slower, and I think he may not be able to finish this lap here and grab that purple sector times, as the session has officially come to an end here. As we now dive into qualifying, so we had a brief session there for practice. Of course, we go from qualifying and then we'll go into the warm-up. Of course, before the warm-up, we'll have a brief driver's briefing, where of course the drivers will be briefed about the do's and don'ts, what they can do, and of course about the race as well. So Dan Kirby, he wants to get that lap back. He really wants to be out there first. He wants the cleanest of air possible, and he really wants to go purple in all 3 sectors. Maybe not to do it right at the get-go, because you don't want to show everybody what cards you have at the moment. Best to keep your hands to yourself before the end of the session, but of course time is a factor. Just 20 minutes of qualifying here for the Pro, the Purist and the AM category. Of course they all go out at the same time by the looks of it. Yes indeed they will. because we have a few drivers that are shown as in the pit lane, and we have a few drivers that are shown out on track. Because of course, as with normal racing, that is mixed class racing, the drivers will set their position in their respective category. So for example, if Walter de Bruyn gets the fast time, he will be at the front of the field, but we could see an AMCAR be up there, we could see a Purist up there. I think we will probably see a Purist up there, to be honest, because of course they have the hardest settings, and of course they will have the maximum they can get from the vehicle, as long as they just don't get it wrong, that is. There's Tom Lane getting some heat into his tyres in his Manta Squid LM, the Porsche 962. Of course, he is in the, there is Tom Lane, which category is in. My screen has decided to give up. And let's have a look manually where Tom Lane is. He, of course, is in the C Pro category. His name's right there, underneath Walter de Bruyn. So the first laps here, this is kind of a warm-up lap here. Oh, going off a bit wide there for Ben Borman. Not the best way to start your first warm-up lap there, but of course this is the start of the first flying lap here. So one more time around, and we'll get the first times in the books here as we ride on board here with Brian Hall and the Hall Brothers Racing Jaguar XJR 14. I've got to say the windshield on this car is absolutely massive in this car as well, and incredible amount of visibility from that dome that's ahead of him. It's got to be hands down the best visibility a driver can have in this race. It's all that windshield wiper probably wasn't there, but of course that would act as some sort of point of where he wants to be in corners. As we'll continue on board here with Brian Hall. Let's see what he can put in here on his first flying lap here around the Nürburgring. As he said, in his Jaguar XJR 14 for the Hall Brothers Racing. It looks as if we have all but one driver currently out at the moment. The only car that we don't have at the moment is Dahlgren, by the looks of it. We continue on board here. Now we're up towards now one of the trickiest parts of the track, as he said. Now we're going to see if he's going to let off the accelerator. No, he's going flat out through there. He's managed to do an upshift as well from 4th to 5th, topping out at 269 kilometers an hour. It has to be kilometers, no way that's miles per hour, because that's insanely fast if it is in miles per hour. But it would be absolutely ridiculous. But Dan Kirby puts the fastest time so far with a 1:27.645. Brian Hall across the line will be third there with a 1:30.187, 3 seconds back almost from Dan Kirby. It's a little less than that, it's about 2.5 seconds between the two of them, but Ben Borman was also across the line there, and he did it with a 1:29.012, so he's about 1.4 seconds off the pace at the moment, or about 1.367, as we ride on board now with the early pace setter. Now it's interesting that he is the fastest man out there, because the Mazda 787B is the slowest on the straights. Now he does have the upper hand when it comes to the corners, and well, there are some very tricky and tight corners around here, but there are also plenty of long straights, including kind of the one that he's on right now with that small kink to the right. But however, he is the fastest man out there, and he's putting that 787B to good use at the moment. Here we're looking at now Tom Lane, who is in C Pro. We've got a yellow in Sector 1, the 8th place car overall. Stephen Miller has had a slight issue by the looks of it. It's going through the first two corners here. As the Manta Squid LM Porsche 962C, who we just saw there, sits 4th overall in class, 8.5 seconds adrift from Walter de Bruyn, with Ben Borman still in 2nd at the moment. Didn't improve his time, or did he? No, he didn't, because now Walter de Bruyn has gone 2nd fastest, 0.3 of a second back. So there is now on the front row of the grid, provisionally, if the session were to end now, we would have a Purist with a Pro car alongside for company, and then on the second row of the grid we'd have Tom Lane, another one of our Pro drivers here. But of course this is early days, early parts of the session here, so still plenty of time to sort out who will be where. But it looks to be like the pros are really trying to shake it up here with the Purist.
You're not going to steal all the fun, are you? I was just hoping you would... I'm sorry I'm a little bit late to the party, but I managed to get there in the end. Apologies for all those of you who are hoping to have me from the start of the broadcast, but I have now managed to make my way into the booth, and wow, these cars look absolutely stunning around the Nürburgring. They look absolutely fantastic, and obviously you've picked up on a very interesting and significant point there, Chris. The Purist battle definitely is going to be very interesting to see how close the pros can get to it. Tom Lane actually getting a puff of smoke as he came through there in the Manta Squid Porsche, which has had a bit of a makeover of late. And good to see that the battles are definitely going to get interesting here on the Nürburgring. 230 kilometers of racing. That should take us quite... Look, you can see when he gets to full speed, that is a little bit of smoke coming off the engine. So they're running that very rich by the look of things.
Yeah, I would have said it would have been a tyre rub, but then where would he have got that from already? So I wonder if these, as you said, his settings are turned up all the way to maybe a full extent where he shouldn't be doing it, pushing the engine maybe a little bit too much, pushing it more towards getting all the raw power out of it. But then, of course, you don't want to do that in the Mazda, that's for sure, because you'll end up shooting the rotary to, well, somewhere on the Nordschleife. And if you run it that hard, and he's gone into the pit lane, presumably to tweak his settings ever so slightly, because if he's running it there with just 7 minutes into the session, 7 minutes into the session, because we've got a 20-minute session, and he's already having that smoke, what's it going to be like for 230 kilometres here? So you see Ben Borman mixing it up here with traffic, and that's going to impede him on his current lap, so he may have to count this one out, and he'll have to try again next time round. Although he did make quick use of the quick moves of the traffic, but he has got it going again here. Here's Ross Smith in the Peugeot 905, which seems to also have quite a significant greenhouse on it, giving the drivers maximum visibility. There's Ross Smith, joined us earlier on. Has his fingers crossed for a podium finishing position in Purist, currently sitting third overall, 1.9 seconds back from Dan Kirby. He currently lines up 7th overall on the 4th row of the grid. A bit of catching up to do is Dan Kirby, still that 127.645 right out of the gate. I think he was just in the zone. And interesting enough, big puff of smoke there, Jake, as well, from Ross Smith's Peugeot 905. So as he tweaked his settings as well to put maximum strain on the engine. But if he's getting this in 10 minutes of racing, he's going to have to think of the settings before we start the race, because he's going to have to tune that again.
Yeah, it's a very good point, and you do get a little bit of running cold smoke coming off the cars occasionally. Doesn't happen too often as we watch Timon Suvic come out onto the circuit in the Kowalski Sauber. But as Suvic heads out onto the circuit, currently running in 3rd place, this Kirby and Smith duel for Purist pole position, just 0.4 of a second quicker than that of Wouter de Bruin. Definitely going to make things interesting out of qualifying, but yeah, I think drivers are just trying to dial their car in as fast as possible for qualifying sessions. So obviously they're running the gauntlet a little bit, and they can tweak and make a slight adjustment ready ahead of the start. What is really nice to see is that there's only a second between the leading cars in the 3 categories. So Dan Kirby in the Purist category, Wouter de Bruin in Pro, and then Henrique has managed to get a 128.642, I think that is, 643. So literally almost to the 1,000th of a second, there is 1 second between the fastest drivers in each of the 3 categories. There's George Angelidis in the Mazda, the 787B. This is the car, of course, that is probably the slowest of the Group C cars in a straight line, but where it has deficiency in terms of top-end speed, it more than makes up for it in terms of mechanical grip and traction. This is where the car is so strong over the course of a race distance, and George Angelidis obviously hoping for another decent result here as they tuck their way through. Slightly shorter configuration of the Nürburgring Grand Prix layout. For a wild moment I thought we were going to have the 230 kilometers on the Nordschleife, but even we had decided to see common sense and go for a slightly shorter configuration of the Grand Prix circuit at the Nürburgring, with a slightly wider trajectory at the Vidal chicane as well. There is John Mayer in the other of the Mazdas from the Lucky Strike team. So some good battles between those two are likely to once again rear their head here at the Nürburgring, but obviously with this being the 1991 category, you're not going to see them having to deal too much with the slower cars, just similarly speeded cars. Here is the circuit configuration for this one. It's the old school circuit, so the Castrol S that they go through rather than the Mercedes Stadium section, the right-left on the way down to the Ford curve, then up to Dunlop, and then they go through that almost flat in Group C cars, left kink at Shell, then up to Spotvart, which is the square left-hander, into the square right, where I actually sat at Bit Curve for the 2001 European Grand Prix. Actually sat on that corner and had a massive Juan Pablo Montoya fans screaming in my ear for the entirety of the Grand Prix. Hatzenbach-Bogen, that flat-out right flick, and then up to the Vidal chicane, which is quite open for this configuration. It's not as tight as the Michael Schumacher reprofiled version. And then up to Roma curve to finish things off on that final hairpin, coming back onto the Ziergrad, the start-finish straight. Fabulous circuit this, and a fabulous version of the circuit. Not widely used up until the mid-90s, but certainly great to see the Group C cars coming out onto the circuit and giving us a real taste of what this circuit can deliver.
So we had a few changes there in terms of position. So Walter de Bruyne now has gone fastest of all with a 1:27.386. 368, apologies, was keeping a close eye on that, because I wouldn't have thought he would catch up to Dan Kirby that fast, as Dan Kirby did put a new fastest lap of the race as well, just before Walter de Bruyne's time. But the gap now is 0.019, 100th of a second separate our top two, and now the C Pro drivers now really showing what they're made of here, because now Walter de Bruyne will line up on the first row of the grid with Tom Lane on the second row of the grid. So we've got two of the pros already up onto the top two rows for now, but still 8 minutes to go in the qualifying here. But as we said, that Dan Kirby is now on another hot lap here. He's 0.3 of a second down from his fastest of the race of the session so far, excuse me, with a 21.796 through that first sector. Now, what can he do for Walter de Bruyne? Because I can't see his sector time at the moment for Walter de Bruyne. He is working his way now through. We should have gone through sector 2 already. Yes, he has. Well, actually, he's doing it right now as we speak. I have a feeling he's come out of the pit lane because he's not put a sector 1 time in this time round, so this might not be as quick as we first anticipated, as the Dan Kirby car is coming right up behind him at the moment. It looks like Walter de Bruyne is actually slowing across the timing line there into sector 2, and that time around at 42.222 there for Dan Kirby. He is 0.013 seconds faster than his personal best so far, and he's through the final corner now. Now, what can Dan Kirby do when he comes across the line? There's Walter de Bruyne just tucked up behind him at the moment. As Dan Kirby is across the line, does he get pole position? Does he snatch it away? No, he doesn't by the looks of it. And the sector times have not updated here on my screen. It has just now. It's done a 23.373. That's good enough for it. 1:27.387. 2/100th of a second separating our top two for the time being, with 6.5 minutes left on the clock. Plenty of time to get more lap times in, but I think this is going to be the battle between Walter de Bruyne and Dan Kirby at the moment in the Porsche 962, and of course the Mazda 787B. Here is, well, there was Tom Lane. He currently sits in third overall, but Walter de Bruyne, the current leader of the timesheets at the moment, but for how much longer? And he's really throwing that Porsche around there through the corners. Heading into the braking zone, a little bit skittish there with the rear end, almost lost it through there, but managed to keep it all on track. I think if he was in the Purist category, he may have lost it through that corner. He's throwing it all over the place there. Just the only thing that he hasn't thrown at the moment is the kitchen sink, as he's coming through one of the fastest corners of the track. As Ross Smith across the line improves, but still now he's on the third row of the grid, tucked up behind Filip Henrik. But he's sharing that row at the moment with Timon Sovic. Walter de Bruyne now across the line. Does he improve this time round? He's gone purple through sector 2. What does he do when he comes across the line? Does he have a new fastest lap of the race? Yes, he does. A 1:27.205. That puts him now 1/10, almost 2/10 of a second actually up from Dan Kirby. And I think for Walter de Bruyne, he threw absolutely everything at it. He's decided, right, that's enough for now. I'm going to call it quits on this lap. I'm going to take a bit of a breather and see what the rivals can do this time round. Only 5 minutes left to go here in qualifying. Yellow in sector 2. who's had a bit of an incident. 15th overall. Who is that has had the issue? I think we're getting a replay now. This might be for Tom Mountjoy of Hardtail Racing, who had that issue through Sector 2, but the good thing is he's got going again.
So obviously an interesting section of the qualifying session, and we still know just how hard Wouter de Bruin has had to pull that lap out of the bag to get it to a 127.2. Is there going to be a retaliation now from Dan Kirby, or is that just about all that the Lucky Strike Mazda can give him on a hot lap? Certainly there is time to go out and do another one in the Purist category, and that's exactly what Kirby's doing, going out with his teammate George Angelidis. So obviously the Lucky Strike Mazdas are definitely going to be a force to be reckoned with here. They come out of the pits very quickly, of course, and that is due to the fact that there is no speed limit in the pit lane, which is obviously something that a lot of the drivers, the regulars within Champion Motorsport, obviously have to get used to the fact that there's flat on the throttle down the pit straight, because this is of course before the times when there would be a pit lane speed limit in the world of motorsport. So obviously in virtual racing there's no issue, but having to come into the pits and then lining up in your pit slot, your dedicated pit bay, is very tricky when you are going flat on the throttle to try and get to that point. So the replay monitor comes up again. Now, I'm not entirely sure what the reason for that one was, but certainly I think we're getting ourselves geared up for a race, hopefully full of replays with some more interesting battles. That's Barry DiMarzo having just gone second quickest in the AM category. So DiMarzo and Maya in the AM category are right up at the sharp end, and Kirby and Angelidis in the Purist are having a very solid time of it too. But can anybody get through with a time relative to that of Wouter de Bruin? That's definitely still to be seen. 2 minutes 40 on the clock.
Stan Kirby currently on a flying lap at the moment, as he's made his way out of the pit lane. Keeping the dust there just behind him, but not too much to worry about. I noticed as well on the Lucky Strike cars that they've managed to match their front wheel caps with the Lucky Strike branding on the car, which I think was quite cool to look at as well. Seeing that disc there, the Lucky Strike logo spinning around. I've seen a few other drivers as well have made good use of at least the front axle. There's one of the 905s that's gone off. Sorry, that's a 906, excuse me, of the Peugeots that's had a little bit of an incident in the first sector. Now, interesting enough, Wouter de Bruin has come back out here in qualifying before the start of the 230 kilometres, and it's probably got enough time for at least one lap. Now, if he will have time to do those, he hasn't got too much to worry about at the moment, albeit though Dan Kirby has gone quicker through sector 1 with a 21.898, not purple but it's green, as we see one of the Mazda 787Bs off there. Currently it's neither Wouter de Bruin or Dan Kirby, because of course Wouter is not in the Mazda. That was Lubis Rosalanka, who unfortunately had a quick look at what the gravel trap has to offer. As Dan Kirby now out of sector 2 into sector 3, he's gone green again with a 42.147, but will it be enough to take back the lead here on the session and put his Lucky Strike Mazda on the front row in? Well, he's already on the front row. He needs to be in that pole position. That's what he's aiming for here. He's across the line. The timing has not reflected yet. It has. He went purple through there, but unfortunately sits in second in 23.230. He was 0.07 of a second faster than anybody else has been so far through sector 3. He's got enough time now for one more lap. Can he take down Wouter de Bruin, or will it be de Bruin and Dan Kirby in first and second? One lap to go here in qualifying. Tom Lane looking to improve his position as well. He's currently third, so he's actually snuck up in the meantime here. Up now into second overall in class behind Wouter de Bruin. But more importantly now on the third row of the grid in the Manta Squid Porsche 962C. He'll of course start behind his fellow C Pro rival. And the checkered flag wave, so this will be the last lap here. Dan Kirby, not purple through sector 1, but what can he do through that second sector? He has gone green but not as fast as Walter de Bruin has gone through that first sector. What can he do through this second sector now as he's across that timing line now? And he's gone slow. He's had an issue because he's 4.1 seconds off the pace. So unfortunately, on the very last lap in qualifying, he's going to have to settle for second.
So it is going to be Walter de Bruin then that hangs on. I think he just brought the Porsche 962C out onto the circuit as an insurance policy. He doesn't need to go for that fast lap now because obviously Dan Kirby has bailed, and he will have been told that, although he does look like he wants to finish off the lap just to see what it would have been. It probably would have been enough the way he's currently... Yeah, pushing it very hard indeed. Is he going to be able to come through for the ultimate time across the line? He's just done a 1:27.205 as his best time, but it is not an improvement. So they're out on the circuit as an insurance policy, but he didn't need it. He'd obviously done enough to put himself on the top spot. So Pro is quicker than Purist by just over 1/10 of a second. Not much in it at all. Just under 1/10 of a second now, of course, because Dan Kirby having increased his time to a 1:27.275. So not even 1/10 of a second covering the top two cars. Brilliant stuff. The Virtual World Sports Car Championship already producing even more drama here at the Nürburgring for the 230 kilometers of the 1991 Group C's. It's definitely going to be a fascinating race.
Certainly is, as of course, before we go into the race, we'll have a warm-up, and then, of course, we'll go into the race. But let's have a quick look again at the standings here. Ben Borman in the Porsche 905 leads the championship by just a single point in the Purist category ahead of Ross Smith, with Ahmed Abdullah, who's not here this weekend, a further 14 points adrift from second, but 15 from our overall leader in the category, with 60 points to his name. George Angelidis and Dan Kirby, the two Mazda 787Bs, running out the top five with 46 and 35 points apiece. Dan Kirby's got a lot to make up for here if he wants to challenge for a championship here. In the teams, though, it's Nookie Monsters, the Peugeot 905s, with 140 points, almost double that of what Lucky Strike Mazda Racing have in the 787Bs, who are at 87 points, but 17 points ahead of Kowalski Motorsports in their Sauber Mercedes C11.
So the Purist category is still very open at this point, just a single point between Ben Borman and Ross Smith. In the Pro category, it's just as tight. Jason Whitehead currently leads in his R90 CK, just a whisker in front of Walter de Bruin. No wonder he wanted the pole position this time. Ludwig Askinis and Brian Hall both have 48 points apiece, from Marwan El Adrisi on 40 and Magnus Dahlgren on 35. Tom Lane in the Porsche has 33. And then we get a whole mixture of drivers who are battling away for the lower points. John Uyan in the Jaguar, Jacques Vermeulen and Porje Venter in the Mazdas. They are rounding up the top 10, just in front of Niall Bullion, Mark Jones, Baz Zwartenbal, Matthew Overton, and Kari Kiskaninen is there in position as well. So that is the top 15 drivers in terms of the points. In terms of the teams, it's even closer in Pro than it is in Purist. Storm Rider only have 7 points advantage over the Rookie Monsters at this point. The Hall Brothers and the Gasoline Aftershave Nissans are going to be battling away for third position coming out of this one. The SRA Jaguars, the Logistical Nightmare Mazdas, and they are tied with the Dark Thunder Jags, along with the Logistical Nightmare Mazdas. Flying Kiwi with their Porsches, and Scuderia Bolas Negro in their Porsches only have 12 points, courtesy of Baz Zwartenbal. Very tight in Pro.
In the AM category, Eric Monet in the Porsche 962C leads by 15 points. And 2 wins have certainly helped his championship hunt this season, with John Mayer 70 points to his name, as I said, 15 points back with that single win. Barry DiMarzio in the Mazda 787B with 44 points to his name. He's trailing by quite a significant margin there. Of course, there's still plenty of points on offer here in this season. Tom Mountjoy is 31 points with Stephen Miller in 5th overall, the Jaguar XJR 14, followed by another Jaguar that's a further just 2 points back, the Chevette car there. And then in 7th, Lionel Gennari in the Porsche 962C in 7th, with Abigail Maida, who we saw for the first time out last time in this series of racing here. A win in her debut, but unfortunately not here this weekend. But one win rocketed up her into the top 10 in the category. Dan Mingus in the Porsche 962 in 9th, with Kernan Garling rounding out the top 10. They're just 2 points behind. In terms of the team, Q Mistral in the Porsche 962C leads the Lucky Strike Mazda Racing Mazda 787Bs by, now I got this wrong last time, I think it's 8 points separate the two of them. Hartel Racing's Porsche 962C a further quite a way back as well, 31 points to their name. They're 46 points adrift in third position, with JR Course's Porsche 962Cs in fourth overall, and the Speed Details MRE team in the Jaguar XJR14 tied for points there in fourth, with just 2 points separating them from sixth overall, the Lavish Spenders Racing Jaguar XJR14. However, no one from that team is racing here today. So we look forward now to the start of the session. Before we do that, let's have a quick look at the upcoming races. So today's race, of course, 230 kilometers of the Nürburgring. We take a short break by, I think, 2 to 3 weeks by the looks of it, until the 3rd of September, which will be the 60 minutes of Fuji. Then it's another break till the 17th of September and another 230 kilometer race at MAK Corp. And if I'm not mistaken, the race on the 8th of October is not for the historic 1991 series. It's actually for the VWSC, where we'll see the hypercar and the GTs. And of course, will be the 100 minutes of Road Atlanta.
Yes, indeed. The Petit Le Mans, as it's often coined by the world of sports car aficionados, really love the Road Atlanta circuit. Fabulous location, and it will provide us with some fantastic battles. Nürburgring does have a tendency to bite. We saw it a couple of times through qualifying, Chris. There's a lot of drivers pushing and running the gauntlet in qualifying. They're going to have to be a lot smoother in the races, because we saw drivers basically running over those curbs and having to try and save the back end of their cars as they slewed out of control. There's no electronics on these cars. There's no traction control, no yaw control, none of that. So obviously the competitors are going to have to be very, very careful out there to run those high curbs. They bite with these Group Cs.
Yeah, and we noticed some of them as well also had puffs of smoke coming out of the rear end as well. So a lot of them dialing up all the way to 11 to push as much as they can for the engines. They're going to have to be very careful with that in this race here, because 230 kilometers, while it doesn't sound like massive amounts of kilometers covered, it is quite a long race here. We're looking at least over an hour and a half here around the Nürburgring. And if we've seen that already within 10 minutes of a race, after 60 minutes, it's going to be a real issue. We might see some engine blowouts. And no doubt a few of the drivers will be tweaking their cars ever so slightly to ensure reliability of that engine stays with them, essentially, to the end of the race. Because the last thing you want is an engine blowout. Because, of course, that will not be fixed. And it will not be an easy fix either, because that means the entire engine needs to be removed and replaced. Because even though we are racing online, and yes, it might be easier than racing a real life car, we do it with as many realistic features as we can to add that sense of realism. And that, of course, includes the Purist category, which are doing it, I think the correct word is probably as hardcore as possible. I don't think I could ever do an online race in the settings that they're using, let alone actually the Pro or the AM category, to be honest. When it comes to racing online, I am hands down the worst driver imaginable. I do love racing and I do love my cars, but unfortunately when it comes to racing online, I don't really know what the term would be for. I'm the backmarker of the backmarkers.
Dare I say, are you sort of the UGE day of sim racing at that point? Is that what you're trying?
Yeah,
is that what you're trying to put down?
Essentially, yes.
Well, there's plenty more great races in your future, I'm sure. All it takes is a little bit of training and experience. It obviously, we've seen a lot of drivers come from novices right up to the front end of the field. And in Virtual World Sports Car Championship, these guys all started somewhere with a lot of time, a lot of discipline, a lot of patience, and a heck of a lot of hard work to get up to the front end of the field. 230 kilometers await us in the Virtual World Sports Car Championship. The drivers are just having their briefing, and then obviously a couple of laps out on the circuit for warm-up. And of course, during that warm-up, what they're actually going to get is an opportunity to practice their pit entry. That's pretty much the main focus for the warm-up session for the drivers at this stage. You've obviously had a lot of practice coming into this one. They know what sort of pace the car can get in terms of one lap for qualifying. That have already run their race strategies. So the warm-up is an opportunity for the drivers to come into the pit lane full on the throttle and then try and slow the car down, ready for its run out on the circuit. A few of the drivers will obviously have an interesting time of this. And it's worth pointing out, Chris, that because they're coming in flat on the throttle, they've got to nail the pit lane trajectory and into their pit bay pretty much spot on. Otherwise, that could really compromise them in terms of the time that they'll lose.
Of course, and as you said before, there is no pit lane speed limiter at all, so they can go as fast as they want through there. Some of them are certainly going to go flat out in the pit lane, because of course they're going to be saving maximum amount of time, but they're going to need to be able to stop in time, and of course that's what they'll be using the warm-up part for, and of course that's going to be a very crucial part, because it's going to be in quick, out quick. But if you miss the brakes, you're going to be out of the race even quicker. With that said, so we're moments away from starting the session. It looks like warm-up is about to start here. So the driver's briefing has been concluded. We have about just over 12 minutes to go here in the warm-up session to give the drivers a little bit more track time here to get used to the track as well, maybe practice their pit stops as well. As here is a look at the starting lineup. Walter de Bruyn in the Porsche 962 number 68 will start in pole position, with Dan Kirby alongside for company in the number 90. Going down to row number 3, Ross Smith and Timon Sovic will share that third row of the grid, with Brian Hall and Magnus Dahlgren on the fourth row of the grid. It was Tom Lane and Philip Henrique who will share the second row. George Underlinis and Barry DiMarzio will round out the top 10 on the fifth row of the grid in the two Mazdas there for Lucky Strike Mazda, with Stephen Miller and John Mayer lining up alongside them, each other, actually behind them. Row number 7, Gilles Lalande with Tom Mountjoy alongside for company. Lucas Roloslanka with Jason Whitehead will share the 8th row of the grid. In the Mazda and the Nissan, the Sol Nissan as well here this weekend, the R90CK. So we don't see more of them out there on track, but unfortunately just one here this weekend. But always great to see the Nissan on track too here around the Nürburgring. I think we have just 16 drivers here this weekend for this Virtual World Sports Car Championship. The historic series we're running here this weekend. Last time we did the Hypercar and GTs at Road America, but this weekend here in Germany. And we're looking forward to 230 kilometers of racing here at the Nürburgring.
There'll be so many battles as they get towards the first 100 kilometers or so, because you're going to get this fabulous wave that we get in the 1991 category of all these drivers battling away with each other, trying to outfox each individual class. And we get some really entertaining battles with drivers, especially ones that are trying to stretch the limit of what the car can do. And certainly in the mid-race, you're going to get this fascinating tussle, not just between the drivers within each class, but also Purist versus Pro. There's always this little bit of banter with everybody as they try to put themselves into a good situation and try to get themselves into a bit of a stink through the middle of the section of the course. But it's very, very interesting to see how the drivers have been able to get themselves into this nice mode on this circuit. It's very different to some of the other circuits that we've had through the course of this VWSC season. And obviously you're going to get to see a few different dynamics through the course of the race itself. Drivers will want to push the limit here and really want to give themselves a bit of a tall order. You've got two championships within the championship here, where the gap between the two leading cars is just a single point. So there's obviously definitely going to be some interesting dynamics going on within the individual classes. Having this nice rivalry for position is definitely going to give us plenty to talk about.
That it certainly will. And of course, this weekend we have 6 different cars racing. We've got the Sauber Mercedes C11, of which there is only one here of Timon Sovic, who will be racing that for Kowalski Motorsport. We have the Porsche 962C, the Jaguar XJR14, which are two of the more popular cars, with the Nissan R90CK being, I don't want to say unpopular, but it's one of only one car racing here this weekend. Jason Whitehead will be in control of that car, with the Peugeot 905 being another fan favourite here this weekend, along with the Mazda 787B. The Mazda 787B is probably the unique one out of all 6 cars, running the rotary engine, that weird sort of triangular thing rotating in that circle, which is a phenomenal engine, and the sound that it emanates is absolutely phenomenal. The Sauber Mercedes is a twin-turbo V8, as is the Porsche 962, however it's a twin-turbo flat 6. The Jaguar and the Peugeot are both naturally aspirated, and the Nissan R90CK also runs with the twin-turbo V8. Now, in terms of performance overall, the quickest car in a straight line would be the Sauber Mercedes C11. However, it's hampered when it comes to mechanical grip through the corners. The Mazda 787B is kind of the opposite there, as it is the fastest through the corners, has a lot of mechanical grip, and it really hugs the road there, but is slow on the straight. So for the drivers using that Mazda, they're going to have to think corner only, corner only, corner only, where the Saubers are going to be thinking, right, I need to get full speed down this straightaway, and that's how I'm going to be making up positions here this weekend. As we see one of the excuse me, that's one of the Porsches that's having a quick spin. That was just a quick replay there of a brief incident. Luckily it didn't happen in the race, because that would have been absolutely disastrous if it did. Actually, sorry, that's the C11, isn't it? That's one of the Mercedes, the Sauber cars by the looks of it. So actually there's that would be Timon Suvic, if that's the case. No, it's not, because we have two now. We have Gilles Landelonde, who is also racing in Mercedes, so apologies for that. We actually have two of them here this weekend, not just the one. It's just over 6.5 minutes remaining here in warm-up. Anticipating the start here for our three categories. We've got Purist, we've got Pro, and we've got AM. Of course, Purist not for the faint of heart there. The ones that want to go, well, all out, throw everything at it, with maximum settings turned off. And then we have the Pro and AM categories, which are more or less the same, but Pro, of course, for the quicker of the drivers. Now, I don't want to say they're the slower drivers in the AM category. Let's just say they're the novices. They're the ones that are climbing the ranks here of sim racing in the VWSC Historics.
They're the category that I would end up being in if I ever had time to race rather than commentate. So definitely got a lot of respect for those guys. And yeah, there's going to be a fabulous battle between those particular drivers in that category. Keep an eye in particular on the likes of DeMarzo and Maya, as they will run in the similar category. I think we are about to go to racing now. So obviously we've had the initial bit of warm-up, and indeed the cars are now being switched to the starting grid. It works out to 50 laps under green flag conditions and an additional lap of the rolling start. So it is just over Grand Prix racing length, 230 kilometers. But of course, in Group C's, the lap times are not actually going to be too dissimilar, as these cars are ridiculously fast. So you can expect us to have great racing action all the way through till about 9 p.m. tonight. And the competitors are gearing themselves up ready for an exciting tussle. Walter de Bruin versus Tom Lane on the front of the Purist battle. Definitely going to be interesting. Here's the grid in full. Walter de Bruin in the Porsche will be pole position, along with Dan Kirby in the Lucky Strike Mazda in the front row. Then row 2, we'll see Tom Lane in the Manta Squid Porsche alongside, and then in 5th position, Ross Smith, along with Timon Suvic in the Kowalski Sauber. Brian Hall in the Hall Brothers Jaguar will be alongside Magnus Dahlgren in the ME Racing XJR14. George Angelidis and Barry DeMarzo, a pair of Lucky Strike Mazdas across the two different categories. Stephen Miller, 11th on the starting grid in the Speed Details Jag, and then John Meyer in his Mazda. Gilles Lalonde in the Contact Sauber will be alongside Tom Mountjoy in the Hardtail Porsche, and then Lubos Rosolanka in his 787B, and Jason Whitehead in the Storm Rider Nissan, running in 16th position on the starting grid. They are going around for their formation lap. And Chris, this one's going to be tough to predict.
It certainly will be, because you've already had Purists mixing with Pros and vice versa. As you said, we've got 50 laps in the books. We're looking at about an hour and a half worth of racing here. We're looking at least 2 pit stops, maybe 3 if the drivers can really stretch it out there. So strategy is already on the minds of the drivers. They've already planned exactly when they want to come into the pit lane. But of course, yellow flags, safety cars, these things will play in the hands of strategies. Will they play out correctly? Will we have some drivers running out of fumes as we did last week? Well, we have an hour and a half, or 230 kilometers to figure that out. Will we see a Purist car up the top step of the podium? Well, as Jake said, it's going to be quite difficult who that would be, because of course Dan Kirby will line up on the first row of the grid alongside one of our pro drivers, Walter de Bruin here, as they slowly work their way through sector 2 here at about 60 to 80 kilometers an hour. The slowest, no doubt, we'll see them. They won't even go this slow through the pit lane, which boggles my mind to think about this. And was that Dan Kirby who's just getting things a little bit too loose there through the corners? There's a concertina effect there, building through that corner. All started with Dan Kirby, may have just lost it through that corner. A little bit too early on the throttle there. That's the last thing you want to do, especially on the formation lap. Good thing is that he's kept it nice and clean. So we're just a couple of corners now before the start here of the VWSC historic race here around the Nürburgring. 230 kilometers of racing action coming your way.
So as the competitors come out of the final turn, they'll obviously be in single file formation rather than in double stack. Coming into the pit lane, that looks like Ben Borman is bringing his Peugeot into the pits on the opening lap. That's interesting, but we are going to get under starters orders regardless, as Wouter de Bruin is going to lead Dan Kirby onto the main straight, and we are going to go racing. Here we go. Up to the start comes Wouter de Bruin in the Porsche, and he's hit the accelerator, so he's obviously got himself a decent run out in front of the rest of the field. It looks as though already Tom Lane is having a hunt on the inside of Dan Kirby. Kirby's going to brake much later than Wouter de Bruin. He almost gets a move on the inside line as the drivers bounce around in that opening chicane. It is not easy to get the car turned in, but de Bruin leads away. Then it is Kirby, Lane, and in the background that looked to me like Brian Hall. Oh, sorry, no, that is Suvic, because of course Smith has ended up falling down the field. So an interesting start to proceedings for sure, but Wouter de Bruin and Dan Kirby mean business early on.
Yeah, it certainly is. It's interesting that why Ben Borman has come in already. Now, I wonder if that's a sim rig issue or another issue that he's facing and not seeing any messages pop up, unless he's serving a penalty, because it looks like he may be out. No, he's not. He's actually gone straight in the pit lane. Actually, Tom Mountjoy has gone in the pit lane as well. Ben Borman has come out, but Tom Mountjoy, who he missed, has gone into the pit lane but has not come out. So that's not a penalty. That is further issue there, and he's already listed as a DNF. What has happened to Tom Mountjoy on the opening lap here of the 230 kilometres of the Nürburgring? Already things are going not as proverbially planned for certain drivers. Dan Kirby already chasing down Wouter de Bruin, and look at the gap these two are building already on Tom Lane, who is now defending in third position from who's tucked up behind him. It's Philippe Henrique who is tucked up behind him, but these two have lost significant time to our race leaders. Fastest so far in the race is Dan Kirby on just the first lap of the race there, and he's trying to chase down Wouter de Bruin. 1/4 of a second is the gap separating the two of them. Let's have a look now what their lap times are. They work their way through the first sector. Now, in qualifying and practice, Wouter de Bruin was quickest through that first sector. However, it was Dan Kirby this time round who went quicker than the two did. Than the leader Wouter de Bruin did through that sector. And this time around, Dan Kirby's gone even quicker. He's gone purple already through that first sector as he's chasing hard. Looks for a move on the inside, but of course Wouter de Bruin shuts the door on him there on the Lucky Strike Mazda. And again, you see how much of a difference that Mazda. Look, the Mazda's losing a lot of speed there on the straightaway. It's the corners though where it really starts to reel him in, and that's of course going to play into his hands. But he's going to stick with Wouter de Bruin if he wants to try and make a move. And he's losing a little bit of time, but 1.5 car lengths, maybe possibly 2 car lengths separate the two of them there. As the battle is already heating up here at the front end of the field. Just having a look here at who is further down, because Tom Lane, Philippe Henrique separated by 0.5 of a second. There's a further 1.7 seconds back to Bjorn Sørvik, to Ross Smith. It seems to be we have duos all over the place here, battling in position, although looks like one of the drivers is a bit... Oh, Ross Smith's actually dropped back as well, because he was right with Timon Sørvik, but unfortunately not anymore. He's fallen to the clutches now of Brian Hall. So Ross Smith there having a brief incident. Opening laps there not going his way.
So I haven't seen anything on the race chatter about why Mountjoy has pulled out of the race. I wonder if there's just been a connection difficulty for him, but obviously the race is well underway. None of the issues that we had last time out. So great to see that we are in fine song as the drivers start to get up to speed again. You can see already that there's some good dueling. This is Miller trying to work his way up to second position in class. He's currently battling away with, I think that's Timo Suvik in front of him. So the Sauber Mercedes already having a little bit of pressure, as you've got the Peugeot just in behind, and that of course is Magnus Dahlgren in his Peugeot, trying to move his way further forward. He's obviously got a little bit of work to make up at the moment. But Magnus Dahlgren certainly putting on a very good show from his perspective at the moment. As we continue the duel, this is Dan Kirby leading in his category, right in behind Wouter de Bruin, who is leading his. But there is pride at stake between these two. They want to prove that Purist is better than Pro, and vice versa, as Dan Kirby, who has obviously got his H-pad well in operation here behind Wouter de Bruin. It's a very tricky circuit, this. You can easily throw the car off into the doldrums. But Dan Kirby all over the back of Wouter de Bruin, who is just soaking up and sustaining this pressure at the moment. Both drivers, of course, fighting for the title, although Dan Kirby's got a heck of a lot of time to make up. compared to some of his counterparts. Here's Philippe Enrique leading in the 747 Racing Porsche in the AM category, but he's only 9 seconds at the moment ahead of Damaso. That sounds like a massive advantage coming into the first 4-5 laps of racing, but you have to remember that there's traffic that's also played in its part into that little spread between the two, so it's still very early doors. Dan Kirby, though, absolutely spitting exhaust fumes from Wouter de Bruyners. Now we come back to Brian Hall, who is tucked up there behind Ross Smith in the Nookie Monsters Peugeot. So lots of battles everywhere you look, everybody trying to start their race in as strong a position as humanly possible.
Yeah, it's interesting how the Dan Kirby driven number 90 is sticking with Wouter de Bruyn despite that speed deficiency that it has on the straightaways, but the mechanical grip that it has to the corners and the way the Mazda plants itself through the right and the left-handers, it's quite impressive how he's managing to stay that close to the back bumper of Wouter de Bruyn and not losing out. Here's Stephen Miller. He's currently 3rd overall in class in the 424 in the Jaguar XJR12. Tucked in behind him at the moment, though, let's have a look at who is behind him at the moment. That's my mouse wants to play nice with me. It's John Mayer for HBD in the Mazda 787B, just tucked up behind him. There he is indeed, the Lucky Strike Mazda Racing Mazda 787B. Now a bit further back to these two drivers here is Gilles Lalonde, who is trailing them by 6.7 seconds, so he's really dropped off the pace here in the early parts of the race, and he's doing battle with Lubis Rosolanka, who is 3.7 seconds adrift. And then it's showing Ben Borman is 2 laps behind Lewis already, so it looks like Ben Borman has had further issues right from the get-go. We saw him go straight into the pit lane, but it looks like he's lost significant time, but he is on the attack already in his Peugeot as he's trying to climb his way back up the order. But up in front, Wouter de Bruyn leads by 0.2 of a second at the moment as Ben Borman trying to put his Peugeot exactly where it should be, but unfortunately there is a Mazda in his way. Unfortunately not for these two drivers here, especially for Dan Kirby. He wants to be the Mazda in the way because, of course, he wants to be ahead of Wouter de Bruyn. Wouter is going flat out through the corners there. He's really giving it his all here. Exactly what he did there in qualifying not too long ago. Trying to keep the car on 4 wheels. He might lose it at some point, but again, you can see the gap that Porsche builds from the Mazda on the straightaways, and also going flat out through a couple of his corners as well. Might be helping him, but of course he doesn't have that mechanical grip like that Mazda has behind him, so he's got to be a little bit more careful. Again, through the chicane here, nice and tidy for both of them, but Wouter de Bruyn is now starting to stretch his lead ever so slightly here from the chasing Dan Kirby. The gap now is up to 0.5 of a second between the two of them as they're across the line there. The 962 continues to lead that time round. Now, it looks to be in Sector 3. Dan Kirby starting to dial it down a little bit more compared to Wouter de Bruyn, but he's losing time in both Sector 1 and Sector 2. Actually, scrap that, he's not losing time in Sector 1, oddly enough, whereas in qualifying, that's where he was losing time to the race leader. But you can see, thanks to that additional time gained in Sector 3, Dan Kirby is once again reeled in Wouter de Bruyn, but now through Sector 2 and Sector 3, this is where Wouter de Bruyn now starts to escape up the road and starts to leave Dan Kirby in the dust. But it looks like it's going to be quite a tough ask actually to shake Dan Kirby. Here's Philippe Henrique battling it out for the lead in the AM category here at the moment. Is that Damasio now tucked in behind? I don't think it is. No, it's not. That's Magnus Dahlgren, who's trying to make quick work and get through, because of course Magnus Dahlgren in the pro category currently 5th overall. So this is just for track position. This is not a battle for class, and Henrique is not making it easy at all for Dahlgren. Dahlgren's going to have to really fight hard if he wants to take this position away.
And Dahlgren is definitely getting on with this now. He doesn't want to spend too much longer sat behind Philippe Enrique. They're not in the same category, and obviously Dahlgren in the pro, running in 5th position at the moment, trying to extend that gap over Gilles Lalonde, whilst also trying to stay in touch with Jason Whitehead. Oh my goodness! Magnus Dahlgren has ended up tagging Philippe Henrique. The two of them, as they went up through the flat-out right kink, they have actually come together. We're going to need to see a replay of that, but unfortunately that has really compromised Dahlgren and Enrique's races. Both of them are now really compromised. They're going to be tootling around this racetrack with their tails between their legs.
It looks like Dahlgren got the worst of it there, was it? Because of course he was the one that was behind and unfortunately he is the one that's going to have maximum recovery. Here's the replay of it between the two of them. So let's have a look at what exactly happened here. And maybe Dahlgren there a little bit, he's not happy with the fact that he was stuck behind him. This is a different car that we're looking at here. This is one of the Mazdas. This is not the car that's involved in this incident at the moment. This is another one of the cars, but I have a feeling it was Dahlgren there who just maybe got a little bit too hot, missed his braking point, and unfortunately there was Enrique in front of him, and unfortunately Enrique was just, he's just a passenger. He had no clue what was going on. He's essentially blindsided. Here we go now as we threw the right-hander. Now, this isn't where it took place. Yes, it is actually where it took place. So on the inside goes Dahlgren, and does it look like, oh, they lean on each other, and that's it. They just leaned on each other, didn't give enough racing room. Enrique tried to take the line away from him. Dahlgren was there. Jake, that's a tough one to figure out who was in the wrong place at the wrong time. It looked like Dahlgren actually had the line.
Well, yeah, I mean, Dahlgren was enough alongside Enrique there for them to go side by side through the right-hander. I just don't think Enrique realised that Dahlgren was that close. Look again, you've got Enrique, look, he goes up on the curbs. There goes Dahlgren. He's already committed to the move. I don't think Enrique's even seen him go alongside him. So he's taken his normal racing line, but he hasn't got a lot of spatial awareness there. He can obviously hold the I didn't see him card, but when you're battling with a guy who's directly behind you and then you drift out wide, I think you kind of know that that driver is going to get alongside you and start to pull along and level. So I don't really think that argument is going to hold much water.
Yeah, and I don't think he could call and say, oh, my wing mirror, I couldn't see anything, he was in my blind spot. There would have been a rather large car on that right-hand wing mirror. You definitely would have seen Dahlgren there. But unfortunately for Dahlgren, although we were assuming it may have been his mistake and he may have just missed his braking point, it was actually Enrique that may have had the issue there, not seeing Dahlgren as inside at all. Here's the battle up front once again. Walter De Bruyn and Dan Kirby. Kirby still not able to find a way through, but at the same time, De Bruyn has not been able to shake Kirby at all in the opening 8 laps of the race here around the Nürburgring. We have a long way to go. But Dan Kirby and Walter De Bruyn, they look like they're going to try and fight this out throughout the 50 laps that we have of racing here, all the way to the end. 230 kilometers of battling action like this. Yes, please, is all I can say. Is Dan Kirby is as close as he's been so far. There's less than half a car length separating the two of them. Has Dan Kirby got the run on the inside? Let's see if we can see that Mazda poking out the right-hand side. But again, he's caught up to him out of the corner. And there he is. He's braking as late as he can. How did he make that stick? Well, it's the magic of the Mazda 787B. What a move there from Dan Kirby.
That is beautiful from Kirby, and again, maximising what the 787B is good at. It's not the best car in a straight line, but it is really good on brakes, very strong on turn-in, and has good traction and mechanical grip through the apexes. So Dan Kirby utilising the car to its maximum there, and the Purist gets past the Pro. Both of them are still on for maximum points, but this isn't just about winning a race in class. This is about pride, and Dan Kirby getting a smooth move there on Walter De Bruyn. Textbook.
And he really left that braking to the very last minute as well. How he got through that, how he managed to stay in there. Well, the only answer there is Mazda is the reason that he got through. Here's Tom Lane. He's running second in class behind Walter De Bruyn at the moment. But he's manning the ship pretty well here. He's managed to keep his rivals at bay and behind him as well. He's running in third overall. Indeed he is. He's got the Kowalski Motorsports Sauber Mercedes tucked in behind him for the time being. Again, Timon there, I think he might be struggling a little bit here. He's desperate to get through because, of course, he wants to race with the guys up front as well. Because, of course, he's in the Purist category, so he wants to catch Dan Kirby and maybe take it away from him, and he might do that now as he's on the outside. That's not where he wants to be, though, but side by side...
Oh! No! Tom Lane's been spat out! Tom Lane spat out there as Timon Suvic tried to go round the outside, and Tom Lane has been spat out of the chase there. Timon Suvic has got through, but that has held him up as well, so now Ross Smith is going to have him in the slipstream on the main straight. 2 collisions in 2 consecutive laps here, and I'm afraid... it's a very similar story. 2 drivers not leaving each other enough space to go side by side. Tom Lane, look, has the inside line. He was a little bit slow out of the turn previously, admittedly. But look, Suvic's trying to turn in. He's turned for the racing line, not expecting the Manta Squid of Tom Lane to still be there. I think he felt that he was far enough alongside on acceleration that he was just going to be able to shut the door naturally. A big miscommunication between the 2 drivers there.
Yeah, and Tom Lane's not going to be happy with that as well, because he knew where he was. He knew he had the inside line. He was not expecting Timon to do that, come across the front bumper of his car there and just essentially take him out. So Tom Lane is going to be having some words with the stewards here, discussing, hey, look, I had the line there. You need to penalise him because that was my line, not his. And he inadvertently took me out, unfortunately. Ben Borman is losing more time by the looks of it. He's shown now as 8 laps behind the race leaders. So not all is well with Ben Borman's car at all here in this race here at the Nürburgring. Yes, he is. He's 8 laps behind the closest rival, and he is 9 laps back from the race leader. We haven't seen when he's been in and out, and it hasn't really showed much of yellow flags being waved anywhere. We still don't have an update on Tom Mountjoy either, but unfortunately for Ben Borman, the race is not going his way at all here, and there he is. He seems to be having further issues here as Walter de Bruyn leads the pro category, and he seems to have lost Dan Kirby. Dan Kirby's got through and he's away. Well, you just saw the tail end of his car there sneak through on the right-hand side. There he is, and you can see he's almost a good corner ahead of Walter de Bruyn. I did not expect Dan Kirby to pull out a lead on Walter this fast, but there he's done it already. Now, yellow in Sector 3. Now, who's got an issue through Sector 3? The 12th place car overall appears to have had an issue. Actually, a few drivers appear to be having a slight issue going through the final corner. That seems to have sorted itself out, as we have now under 40 minutes remaining on the clock. Getting a replay here of an incident on track, and it is Mr. Mazda again, although I think this is just him going off by his all by his lonesome, as we did before. Yes, indeed it was, just overshooting the corner there. Oh, here we go, a replay of Ben Borman. This might explain why he's tumbling down the order. Now, I think we caught the tail end of this again, as he's coming through the chicane, and he just loses it there. It looks like just carrying far too much speed. The good news is that he hasn't hit a wall anywhere, but he has lost it a little bit more through the far corner, and Ben Borman's day goes from bad to worse. Now, I wonder if he's having somewhat of a connection issue there with his setup, rather than a mechanical issue, because he seems to be a little bit all over the place at the moment, down in 6th position in class in the Purist category, 9 laps behind the race leader, and that's Ross Smith who's got off in the final corner. The final corner there being getting quite treacherous. Actually, that Sector 3 is becoming quite a hot zone at the moment. Let's see what we're getting a replay of now. Here is the replay of, well, there's the Sauber ahead. Well, there's Ross Smith. This might be what happened to him in the final corner. He's trying to get the... Oh, he just lost it. It looked to be that he just essentially slammed his foot on the brakes, and the car just went, nope, you ain't going anywhere. I'm going to do a 360. And unfortunately, he's lost a position, and he's lost significant time as well.
Yeah, that's not gone well at all, and he's going to have a lot of hard work. We're going to look at it again, I think, trying desperately. Yeah, do you know what he's done? He's desperately tried not to career into the back of Timon Suvic. Had to slam on the brakes. He suddenly realized what was going to happen, and that's actually a very sportsman maneuver there. He realized, I'm going to hit Timon unless I slam on the brakes here. Yes, it's going to ruin my race, but I'm not a dirty driver. I'm not going to wipe out somebody just because. So that was actually, you know, a little bit of self-sacrifice there, and it's definitely come back to bite Ross Smith, but he's at least put himself, you know, out of harm's way for a penalty. So Kirby still leading the way then, in front of Walter de Bruyn, then Timon Suvic currently in 3rd place, 2nd in Purist, then Hall, Whitehead, Smith, Philippe Enrique, who is incredibly still leading the AM category despite being wiped out earlier by Magnus Dahlgren, or vice versa, depending on which way you want to look at it. I think it's tough to know who's going to win that argument. Speaking of which, we've got Tom Lane and Magnus Dahlgren right in behind Philippe Enrique. Oh, and there's a noon car right in the middle of the road. That is a disastrous position to find Ross Smith coming out of the final turn. Ross Smith does get going again. Tom Lane tries to make his move on the inside of Philippe Enrique, thinks better of it, but Ross Smith just abandoned in the middle of the corner out of the final turn. This is a crazy race so far.
Certainly is, and again, Sector 3 seems to be where all the action's happening. This is the previous incident where he'd lost it all by his lonesome there, not going into the back of the car that was in front of him. Now, is this the replay of what happened this time round, and where he was just stationary in the middle of the road? Yes, it is. Now, what happens here? He's not close enough to make a move. He's just lost it there through the corner, and he's hit the wall. Now, with 75% damage on, That car is going to be ailing ever so slightly. He's going to be having an issue, and there are 3 cars that just say, "Oh, Ross Smith, what are you doing here?"
It doesn't
Great
make it any
reaction,
better
Tom, from the
watching
drivers.
it a second time. They just had to pick a direction to dart in. They were so lucky not to hit him.
Yeah, and that was certainly a heart and mouth moment there, just being greeted by a Peugeot 906C just there in the middle of the track. So you see he loses it there. It looks like he's a little bit too early on the gas. Unfortunately, spins it around, can't get the car going again. It's not exactly the engine is stalled, but it just seems he can't get it going again. And 3 drivers come round. How they all missed it. It was a fantastic effort from all 3 there to miss Ross Smith, because that could have gone, well, that could have been calamity, essentially. Here is Ross Smith, attempts the corner yet again. This time round, gets it right. But unfortunately, the Nookie Monsters driver here, he is losing time, and he's lost significant ground as well. Here's Tom Lane. He was 2nd overall in the Pro category until the incident earlier on. Brian Hall now in 2nd position behind Walter de Bruyn, but quite a ways back as well as Brian Hall, because of course he's on to Mitsubic in front of him at the moment. But of course Tom Lane, we're desperately trying to catch up now. He's going to have to switch up his strategy ever so slightly now. Is he going to extend this run a little bit longer on fuel and tyres, as into the pit lane has come Jason Whitehead by the looks of it? Yes, indeed. Jason Whitehead is the first take of the pit lane after just 14 laps of racing here at the Nürburgring. This seems a little too early, though, in the race to be coming in for a pit stop. But, of course, all the drivers and the teams will have different strategies here for their teams and for their drivers. And it seems to be Jason Whitehead may start some sort of chain reaction here. Will we see more drivers come in, or is it going to be the sole driver to do it this early in the race? Seems quite unusual to do it just after 14 laps of racing. Here's George Angelidis, though. He's having a relatively incident-free race here at the moment in his Lucky Strike Mazda racing. The Mazda 787B, of course. As we're going now to a replay. And this is one of the Mazdas. Now, this is one of the Lucky Strike Mazdas as well. Is this George Angelidis that we're looking at now as he's working his way through one of the quicker corners there? I wonder what this incident is for here. No, it looks like it's getting loose. Now we're going to the same car here by the looks of it. So, not sure if he got it wrong anywhere. Looks to be all sort of neat and tidy for the Mazda here. No incident to make note of just yet, unless he misses the next corner. Well, he does. He takes it a little bit of the inside there, a little bit too much than he should have done. But here is the final corner. Does he lose it through here? Not quite, by the looks of it. Does get a little bit squirrely, though, but certainly not a Ross Smith moment. So he's good to go in across the line. So nothing to really make note of there. As I wonder now, we'll take a look if there's any more pit stops. Yes, there are. There's more drivers that have come into the pit lane. Now, who else has come in? So we have the driver that's 13th overall into the pit lane. That's Gilles Lalande, who's come in the 2nd of the Sauber Mercedes. We have, well, that's still Tom Mountjoy, who had the issue earlier on, into the pit lane. Unfortunately, we have not seen him come back out. But now that's 2 cars that have come in within the first 20 laps of the race, which again to me seems a little bit too early, I would say. About 17, 18 laps, maybe we see the first pit stops happen. This, for me, seems a little bit too early. The halfway point, of course, would be at 25 laps. So judging by this, we may see some drivers do 1 stop, some do 2 stops, as we have Timon Sovic in the leading the Sauber Mercedes C11 into the pit lane for the first time.
So we had a bit of an off earlier on then for Lubos Rosalanka, who ended up just dropping off the road at the bottom hairpin. But Timon Suvic clearly deciding that he wants to go for an intriguing strategy. So he's going to go heavy on the fuel load here, which is why he's obviously taking a bit more time in the pit lane. But this could actually work out in his favour later on. Ross Smith, who is now promoted to 2nd place in Purist and is down in 7th place overall at this point. So that just shows you how tricky it is to be a Purist and run up at the front end of the field. Full credit then to Dan Kirby, who is somehow keeping his composure together through all of the trials and tribulations that we've been presented with in this race. This is a terrific fight for third position between Dahlgren and Lane, and just in behind them, we've got Ross Smith, who is trying to make his way back up into the overall top 6. Finds himself currently second in Purist, but down in 7th place overall. Here's Dahlgren and Lane again. Now, Dahlgren and Lane have not actually had much of a wheel-to-wheel scrap in this race so far, because obviously it was Dahlgren who ended up connecting with Philippe Enrique, who currently leads the AM category. So there's obviously a lot still to play for in this particular battle, as they still put on a good show. Tom Lane is just trying to close in on Dahlgren on the slipstream. That's Philippe Enrique in front of them. So Dahlgren hoping that lightning doesn't strike twice here. They come through again. Tom Lane just tucked up behind Dahlgren, as Dahlgren is trying to maintain his position. He locks up a little bit there through the chicane as they go down the drop up to the hairpin. Enrique still has a bit of an advantage, so Tom Lane trying to outfox Magnus Dahlgren, trying to dive in for the inside. That's going to be a late commitment. I think he suddenly realised at the last moment there, Tom Lane, that was not going to happen. He did the right thing. He just rolled off the throttle, let the engine decelerate naturally rather than slam on the brakes and risk hurtling into the side of Magnus Dahlgren. He did the right thing there, had good vision, just bailed out of the overtake before they went to the scene of the accident. Something that a couple of the other drivers in the field might do well to learn from. Timon Suvic, though, having got back out onto the circuit after his pit stop, is in clear air. Now, that's going to help him out, because obviously he's not going to have too many people to go wheel to wheel with. He can focus on getting those lap times in, pumping in those strong lap times, and then potentially, if he's able to do this in clear air and just focus on himself, he might even be able to leapfrog a couple of the other cars in front of him on aggregate.
The only issue, though, is that if he's coming this early, he has a lot heavier. He's got a heavier car than anybody else does, because he's put maximum fuel in. If he's put a new set of tyres, and he's obviously going to wear those tyres out much faster than anybody else, especially if he's got this clean air in front of him as well. So he has to be very careful about how he plays out this second half of the race for him. Enrique and Magnus Dahlgren are in the pit lane at the same time. They've just come in. Actually, this one number 8 has just come out. Stephen Miller is coming to the pit lane as well. So I presume this would be sort of the point now where most of the drivers will be starting to come in, maximising their fuel limit, and if they're changing tyres as well. This is quite an interesting point to do, because they're going to have to go a lot longer than some of the other drivers. Granted, not as long as others, but you definitely want to be filling up that tank as much as you can. But let's see now how this pit... the leader is coming now as well. Dan Kirby is in the pit lane. Walter de Bruin stays out, so he'll take the lead of the race now. But very interesting choice here for Dan Kirby to come in on lap number 19. Now, that would leave him with 31 laps to go on this next tank of fuel, unless he decides to come in with, give or take, 9 or 10 laps to go. Ooh, this is going to cut it close. How and when are we going to see Walter de Bruin come in? Brian Hall's gone into second position, of course, now with Dan Kirby currently in the pit lane. John Mayer is in the pit lane as well. I think John Mayer's actually on his way out of the pit lane, as Dan Kirby will lose more time to his rivals here, as he now slips down into 5th position. 6th on track, that's George Angelidis, has come into the pit lane. As out of the pit lane goes our race leader, or previous race leader even, Dan Kirby, because of course Walter de Bruin's gone back into the lead of the race. Now, interesting enough, the fuel factor, or the heavier load on the car for Timon Suvic, has not drastically impacted him at all, because if we're looking at Walter de Bruin's time and Timon Suvic's car times, he is 0.4 of a second faster through the first sector compared to a race leader. So that additional fuel load that he presumably has on board is not hampering him as one would presume, as DiMarzio is into the pit lane as well. He, of course, is the leader in the AM category. So Henrik he's been in and out, Miller's been in and out, Mayer's been in and out. There is DiMarzio currently in the pit lane as well, serving his first pit stop. Walter de Bruin has continued to stay out, is continuing to do green times as well in all 3 sectors, so I think it might be a while until we see him come into pit lane. He's going to really stretch out this window as much as he can. Jason White has been in and out of the pit lane. Looks like he's been on and off the track as well, going through the final corner there.
So still plenty to play out in this one. We had Enrique come into the pits pretty much a lap in arrears of Miller, DeMarzo and Meyer, so he's been able to retain his lead. Stephen Miller's not that far away though in the Speed Details Jaguar. He's only about 7 seconds behind. I noticed that Magnus Dahlgren has managed to split them, as too has Jason Whitehead. So Stephen Miller is going to get out just in front of Barry DeMarzo. 1.5 seconds is the difference between those two, with Enrique building up 7.5 seconds over the two of them. Wouter de Bruin has 46 seconds, as we know, on Tom Lane. Brian Hall coming into the pit lane in his Jaguar. So still a long way left to play out. We haven't even reached half distance yet. This is the end of lap 21 out of 51. So 30 laps to go at the end of this one. And there is Brian Hall exiting the pit lane as De Bruin comes off the final corner. So the only other driver in the pit lane now at the moment is Lubos Rosolanka in the Purist category, who still finds himself down the field. Ben Borman, obviously, having dropped all the way down to 16th position. Still not technically showing up as a DNF, I noticed, Ben Borman. But certainly, you know, having only completed 5 laps of racing. So Ben Borman very much out of this one. I wonder if he's going to make an appearance later on. Here's Dahlgren. Sorry, no, this is Ross Smith, the new leader in Purist, after Kirby's pit stop, trying to get his way past Tom Lane, who is second in the Pro category at the moment. So this is the battle for second position overall as Ross Smith continues to hustle Tom Lane in the Manta Squid Porsche.
Yeah, it's interesting that Ben Borman's only completed 5 laps of the race. He's really struggling. However, he's still keeping it on track. He's still going. And mind you, let's have a look at what his lap times are, because they're, okay, well, last time out was a 2:26. Actually, his best has been a 2:26. So he is circulating 30 seconds faster than the drivers that are doing pit stops. However, Barry DiMarzio has done a 2:32.372 in and out of the pit lane, so he's only a couple of seconds slower than Ben Borman's best lap of the race so far. So Ben Borman, despite having issues, is still going strong. Maybe, I think he might have an offline issue, as into the pit lane comes Walter de Bruin, and he almost loses it actually coming into the pit entry there. Got to be very careful, because of course there is no pit lane speed limit here whatsoever. They can go as fast as they want, but of course that's going to be quite tricky, especially if you're too late on the brakes. That's it, you're losing the car, and it's the more you go, and that is the end of your race. Here's Tom Lane in the Manta Squid LM Porsche 962C. He's currently second overall in class behind Walter de Bruin, and he may actually take the lead now in category if he is on track. Yes, he would be, because we're doing 2:30-ish, 2-minute 30-ish lap times with the pit stop. And well, Tom Lane is close enough. There is Ross Smith that's diving into the pit lane as well, so he's backing out this battle from the lead in Purist category. But Tom Lane will now be the overall race leader, and I don't think Tom Lane has actually come into the pit lane yet. Looking at his lap times, no, he hasn't. He's a 1:45, but that's when he had that incident. Oh, he has come into the pit lane actually, because he's done a 2:19. Or is that right at the beginning? No, that's lap number 1. Yes, so that would be the very first lap of the race there. So that was his warm-up lap. So yes, Tom Lane actually still owes us a pit stop, so he won't be the leader for much longer.
No, indeed. So Dan Kirby is now essentially the raw leader of this race. Wouter de Bruin brings his Rookie Monsters Porsche into the pits. So obviously now he is going to segue out behind. But how far behind Dan Kirby? I think he's lost rather a lot of time through that. I think he's ended up pitting for a considerable amount longer than Dan Kirby. Maybe he feels that he can go all the way to the end here, while Dan Kirby may need another quick visit to the pits a little bit later on. So again, this is where strategy really starts to come into play, because that's 30 seconds, 34, 35 seconds or so between Tom Lane and Wouter de Bruin. And Tom Lane is only about 4 or 5 seconds up the road from Dan Kirby. So there's a 30-second discrepancy between the two. Now, De Bruin may feel that with more fuel on board and with fresher tyres on board, he can really push it to try and get that gap down. But at the same time, if Kirby can't extend the length of his tyres anymore to counteract the strategy, then De Bruin may have made the right call anyway.
Yeah, this is going to be quite interesting here as well now, how this last sort of, or the second half of the race. Now, do we see more drivers come in at a later date? A later time even, because we're not running the race over 2 days. We're running it over 1 day, aren't we? Will they have to come in again? Because, of course, with that heavier load, they're going to be putting more pressure on their tyres, and the wear is going to be quite significant compared to those who have got a lighter fuel load. Now, Ben Borman has come into the pit lane. This will be for the second time because, of course, he came into the pit lane at the very beginning of the race. Now, can he go all the way to the end on this, or will this be the DNF that we've been looking for? Nope, he's got back going again, so he's going to continue soldiering on here as Ben Borman. Granted, quite a ways back from the leader in class, because of course he is in the Purist category, and he's 20 laps behind this man right here. Dan Kirby, your race leader, by... how far is he up the road at the moment? Well, it's showing 6 seconds behind Tom Lane. However, that can't be correct. Dan Kirby is certainly in the lead of the race, or is he? Tom Lane actually is still the race leader. He's managed to get out in front of Dan Kirby on his pit stop, but for how much longer is the real question. And is that Dan Kirby lurking distance? No, it's not. That is the 12th place car behind him. That would be Barry DiMarzio in the other Lucky Strike liveried Mazda behind Tom Lane, but the Mazda that is going to be a real threat to him is much further back than originally anticipated. Granted though, Dan Kirby has got some heat in the tyres. He's got a slightly lighter fuel load. Actually, sorry, no, he wouldn't. It'd be the other way around, wouldn't it? His car will be slightly heavier now in comparison to Tom Lane. However, it does look like he's catching up at the moment. The lap times between them is now down to 2 seconds is the gap between the two of them. But Tom Lane, on that previous lap, he's just gone through sector 1, so we can't quite catch exactly what he did through that sector. But it looks to be Dan Kirby is 14th of a second faster through that first sector. So we're going to have another battle for the lead between a pro and a purist once again here at the midway point of the race.
Still a lot that needs to play out here. It's not quite set in stone how this is essentially going to mould away again into a final frenzy. But Tom Lane definitely having made a massive amount of progress on the two cars in front. Looking at what other battles we've got around us at the moment, you've got Brian Hall only about 5 seconds up the road from Ross Smith, so that could end up turning into something quite nice in progress. There is the overall positions. You can see obviously that only 2 drivers are still currently not running. That's Ben Borman and Tom Mountjoy, so those 2 effectively out of the race. Rosalanka is the only one that's been lapped twice. Everybody else up to Stephen Miller has been lapped once, and that's Dahlgren and Whitehead having a terrific on-track battle with each other by the look of things. So Dahlgren and Whitehead having a nice little tussle. They've obviously swapped positions a couple of times. I think Dahlgren got past Whitehead and then Whitehead got him back again. So these two having a terrific battle. Look at the difference between the Nissan and the Jaguar as they come off the turns. Dahlgren trying to make his move here on Whitehead into the hairpin. Now he can commit here. He can dive into the inside, but he's not going to do that. He wants to intimidate Whitehead, make him cause his own mistake, and then just get him on the switcheroo. He's an intimidator, is Magnus Dahlgren. He doesn't actually have to overtake the man in front if he forces him into a driving error.
So Tom Lane is in the pit lane and he loses first and second position on track. Walter De Bruyn and Dan Kirby have both gone through. Those two will now lead the field. In terms of battles on track, though, we had another one as well, Brian, between Enrique and Angelides. They were separated not too long ago by about 0.2 of a second. The gap has gone up to about 0.9 of a second separating the two of them. There it is. There is that battle with George Angelides unfortunately falling behind. Tom Lane, though, is also tumbling down the order. He's now no longer in the top spot in the pro category. He now sits in third overall. He's going to lose more places as well to both Enrique and Angelides, which will put him in the clutches now of Jason Whitehead, although it is showing that Jason Whitehead has gone through. So the Nissan has taken third overall in class. Tom Lane has got a lot of catching up to do. Of course, that incident earlier on has not played into the favour of Tom Lane at all, but certainly will be looking to catch up. He has been a race leader and he's looking to retake that lead at some point, but it's going to be quite a tough ask here because he's not got one car in front of him. He has 8 other cars in front of him to get to the lead of the race. Here's Ross Smith. It's been a very eventful race for him so far. A number of spins already, but he is circulating and he is still inside the top 15. And he's actually further up the order because he's actually in the top 5, isn't he? Yes, he's 4th overall, 2nd in class as well in the Purist category. But he's got Walter De Bruyn and Brian Hall to get through if he wants to challenge Dan Kirby for the lead of the race. And he's 44 seconds adrift at the moment between himself and Dan Kirby. Now, I wanted to see between Dan Kirby and Ross Smith what exactly the pit stop times were there, and if there gives any indication if they've done anything different. Has one put more fuel on than the other? So 2:30.988 for Dan Kirby, and Ross Smith did a 2:18.110. So 12 seconds longer in the pit lane was Dan Kirby. Now I presume that would have put more fuel into the car. So he's looking to do at least a one-stop strategy here, not a two-stopper. But let's see how it plays out now in the second half of the race. Here's George Angelis there running a bit wide. Actually, no, he's using as much of the inside there as he possibly could, not running wide at all there through that corner.
I definitely don't think we've seen the whole story here. Tom Lane now down to 9th position out of all of that. Behind Angelidis and Whitehead, this is George Angelidis. And with Tom Lane now emerging, Angelidis... That's weird. Angelidis is showing up as being in the pits, but we can quite clearly see that he is out on the road at the moment. So that's a slight issue there with the timing screen. Not quite sure what the situation is there, but we know for a fact that Angelidis is on screen racing away and trying to catch up to Philippe Enrique. So Dan Kirby is now currently your leader in front of Walter De Bruyn and then Brian Hall. Ross Smith is in 4th place in front of Timon Suvic, then Philippe Enrique and George Angelidis. Slight issue with the timing screen because he's clearly not in pit road. Then it is P8 for Jason Whitehead behind George Angelidis. Then Tom Lane, who has returned after his brief stint in the lead in 9th position overall, 4th in the pro category. Then Magnus Dahlgren, rounding up the top 10 overall. Stephen Miller from Barry DiMarzo, Gilles Lalonde, John Meyer and Lubas Rossolanka. 2 retirements from the moment are Ben Borman and Tom Mountjoy. George Angelidis now finds himself in 4th position in the Purist category, trying to close up as best he can on Suvic, who is a good... let me try and do the math here. In terms of the gap between them, well, there's not a massive amount between Suvic and Angelidis in the grand scheme of things. There's only about 18 seconds or so between them, so very much still game on. Yellow in Sector 2, and it's a brief one, so just a run wide by the look of things. But we are getting close to the business end of racing here. This is lap 29 out of 51, so a grand total of 23 laps, including this one remaining. Beyond half distance then, there's still a lot that can play out. We've seen already in the first half of the race some crazy moments, and a few drivers are still trying to edge that a little way faster to try and get a little bit more out of the cars in the latter stages. Now here is the spread of pit stops at the moment. Whitehead, Dahlgren and Lalonde have not actually made pit stops yet, according to that graphic, nor have Suvic or Borman, but of course Borman is out of the race, so Timon Suvic still needs to make his first visit to the pit stop.
Timon Suvic has been in already. He was one of the first drivers to come in as well.
That's
so
what
he's already been in and out. Who else was not shown as in the pit? Who's not been in the pit lane? Showing George Angelidis is still in at the moment. I presume everyone has been in and out of the pit lane so far.
I think you're right. Yeah, I think you're right.
It's because we've now elapsed the halfway point. No doubt everyone would have come in by now to do their halfway pit stops. Of course, a few of them will be doing maybe another one sort of in the last 10 laps of the race, because we started seeing pit stops starting around lap 16, which would have been almost 10 laps before the halfway point. So that's going to be quite an interesting one, how that's going to play out for the strategies there. George Angelidis circulating in 4th overall in class in the Purist category, behind Timon Suvic, who is, well, there's the cork in the bottle is called, of course, Philippe Henrique, but it looks to be that battle has dropped back between Henrique and Angelidis, because it was 4/10 of a second this time round. It was a lot closer last time round there, and this appears to be Jason Whitehead lurking in the background by 2.1 seconds. Of course, that's not a battle for position in class, it's a battle position on track. Here's Ross Smith battling with what looks to be Dahlgren in front of him. Is it Dahlgren there in the 44th? No, sorry, that's Brian Hall. This is not for position in class, this is position on road, because Ross Smith is 2nd overall in class. and he's picked up the slipstream. He's going to dive to the inside, a la what Dan Kirby did for the lead a couple of laps ago. Takes the position away, easy enough, through into the left-hander. Thank you very much, and off he goes. Not quite, actually, gets a bit loose there through the corner as well. Almost lost it, almost lost the position as soon as he got it, essentially. But he's managed to keep the 44 behind him with Brian Hall. Hall in the pro category. Here's Walter de Bruin, though, the leader in the pro category, 28.787 seconds ahead there in the lead. Now, there was a brief yellow flag there in sector 2.
Oh, he just passed someone. He just passed someone going off the road there. So I wondered if that was Lubos Rosolanka. I think he might have just gone past the Mazda in the background going off the road. So I think that's what you picked up. But certainly there was a car off the road in that part of the circuit.
I think it was Gilles Lolanda by the looks of it, because it says the 13th place car overall was slow through that sector. Let's see if this is the replay exactly of what's going on. No, that's Tom Lane, and behind him is Dahlgren, isn't it? Yes, it is, and that looks like... Oh! That is a similar incident to what happened a corner or two in front of this corner here, and that's Dahlgren and Lane again.
Well, that is disastrous. So I'm afraid Lane and Dahlgren coming together this time, and that really doesn't endear either of them to each other in the remainder of this race. This is turning into the most chaotic of 1991 races we've had all the way through this season. So a very unfortunate case of affairs. And look, that Studio 397 banner is still just off to the left-hand side of the road there. So that's a slight problem for the rest of the drivers. They will have a chance of potentially getting distracted by that loose advertising hoarding there. But Dan Kirby is still trying to make his way through without incident as he leads the race both in Purist category and overall with about 25 seconds advantage over Walter de Bruin as he goes into lap 32. There are 20 laps to go.
Yellow again in sector 2. Who's having an issue there? Again, the 13th place car overall. It's Gilles Lalande who's having an issue, and he seems to have stopped on track as well. Has that car. It looks like he's got going again. Here's Tom Lane and Dahlgren again battling it out through the first corner. Oh, now was this an earlier incident, or has this happened afterwards? Was that a little bit of payback from Tom Lane perhaps? Or is this the build-up to what we saw moments ago in the previous replay? Very interesting turn of events here between Tom Lane and Dahlgren here at the moment. As Tom Lane seems to have the upper hand at the moment. Now, where are these two in terms of being on track? Tom Lane is in front of Magnus Dahlgren, but on that replay, it was the other way round. So I presume that was possibly a little bit of retaliation there from the Manta Squid driver, making his way back into ninth position. Fourth placed overall has come into the pit lane. Now, who's that? That is not Tom Lane who's come in. Fourth place overall is Brian Hall has come into the pit lane. Now, this presumably would be for the second time. If this is for the first time, he has played the strategy game to a T if he can come in this late after what would be 31 laps of the race. Did he come into the pit lane? Yes, he did. He came in on lap 21. So he's done a 10-lap stint, and this should be good to go to the end of the race now. So the early takers that have come in, which means Timon Suvic has to come in again because he was one of the first drivers to come into the pit lane. So Brian Hall came in on lap 2. Sorry, what lap did he come in again? Let's have a look at Timon Suvic. When did he come in? He came in on lap 17, which is incredibly early. Jason Whited is in the pit lane as well. He was one of the early takers as well in the pit lane, and he comes in the pit lane from 11th overall. Now, Jason Whited came into the pit lane on lap 15. He came into the pit lane. Sorry, lap 14 he came into the pit lane. So he was the first of the drivers to come in. If he's doing every 14 laps, well, he would have done now 18 laps, I think, there. We've got 18 laps to go to the end of the race, I think. So he should be good to go. But this is very interesting, these strategies that are being played out.
Yeah, it's a very unusual route to go, and maybe Jason Whitehead knows something that the other drivers don't, but he certainly feels like that's the way it's going to work out best for him and the Storm Rider Nissan crew. In comes Timon Suvik, and that's his second appearance in the pits as well. So Timon Suvik obviously making his way in, and that's going to drop him provisionally behind Philippe Enrique, who is as high as 4th overall through all of this. There's Jason Whitehead, who is now getting back out onto the circuit in 14th place overall, 6th in the category for the pros, but he has recovered just in front of Philippe Enrique on the road. Timon Suvik's still in pit road. I think we're going to see a few more drivers deciding to go down this 2 pit stop route, and the thing is, you can't leave that second pit stop much later than this, otherwise you really can't recover too much of the time that's been lost. We had a yellow in sector 2, but it's withdrawn fairly quickly, so I don't think it's a major concern, but certainly now you can start to sense the drivers starting to tire a little bit, starting to let those little errors become massive mistakes. Magnus Dahlgren, currently in 7th overall, finds himself 3rd in the pro category, 3rd in the Purist category. Still, George Angelidis in the Mazda finds himself 5th overall at this stage in the Lucky Strike Mazda. About a minute and a half at the moment behind the overall race leader, Dan Kirby. Here's the leader in the AM category. I'm actually really impressed with Philippe Enrique. Despite the fact that he ended up getting into that tangle with Magnus Dahlgren, he still finds himself leading in the AM category, a full 28 seconds ahead of Stephen Miller, as now he dives for the pits. Enrique's in a brilliant position.
He certainly is, and this is the second time he's coming to pit lane as well. He was one of the early adopters not too long ago, so I presume some of the drivers that came in much later will have the upper hand. And one of those drivers that had come in later than anybody else was Tom Lane, and he was one of the last drivers to come in. So either he definitely knows something the other drivers don't know about, because he's going to stretch it as far as he can. But let's see if he can make it all the way, or if he'll be puffing on the fumes as he gets to the finish line in around 15 laps. Here is Tom Lane. He's running 2nd overall in class in the pro category behind Walter de Bruyn, who is further up the road. Excuse me. There's about 2 cars in front of him at the moment. Ross Smith and George Angelidis for Noon Racing and HBD are in front of him. Walter de Bruyn, though, still chasing down Dan Kirby. Of course, Walter de Bruyn, our pole sitter from earlier on today, really took the fight to Dan Kirby and managed to take away that all-important pole position from him. But it looks like Dan Kirby's got the better of him so far in the race. The gap almost extending now to 20 seconds between the top 2. Walter de Bruyn, of course, leading the pro category as he's going around the outside of Stephen Miller at the moment for the next corner. He says thank you very much. Puff of smoke there from the left rear by the looks of it, so a little bit of a lock-up there on the left rear of Walter de Bruyn. Here's Ross Smith, 2nd overall in the Purist category. Now he's a bit further back, as we said, from Dan Kirby. Actually, there's only 1 car in between himself and Kirby, and that, of course, is Walter de Bruyn. And it looks like Ross Smith getting the thick of things, and this is probably somewhere he doesn't want to be, because he's already been in an incident or 2 already in this race. There's that Timon Suvik behind him as well. Here's George Angelidis. He's 3rd overall in class, of course, in the Purist category, ahead of Timon Suvik at the moment. In the 68 car, looking to gain some ground here. He's tucked up behind Ross Smith, but of course 22.3 seconds. Can't really count that as tucked up, but he is in position here for a podium finish, which of course is something that he's looking for here. Here's Timon Suvik, as we said, he's done 2 pit stops already. He's actually behind Ross Smith, who's actually lost a lap to Ross Smith and the other leaders in the category. So he's got a lot of work to do here. As Brian Hall puts in a new personal best, goes green, 8th overall. Here, of course, Brian Hall in the pro category. There he is, circulating 4th overall in that class, behind Dahlgren, Lane, and of course Walter de Bruyn, who leads in this category. But another driver now into the pit lane, 14th overall. Now, who is 14th overall? Quick look at the bottom there. That's Gilles Olander, who had a few issues. There he is in his C11. Some dramas earlier on, but continues on here. Unfortunately, 6th in class in the pro category, and he pulls it off on the right-hand side there. I think he saw that there was a quicker car coming through. And of course, it was Enrique there who went through. Did his job there, did Olander. Didn't want to impede him at all. The good thing, pulled off. Of course, he did lose a bit of time, but unfortunately, he's not in a podium finishing position here in class. nor is he back with anyone. Here's Tom Lane, second overall in the pro category, losing a lot of time. Yellow in sector 2, who's had an issue going through there. It was a 12th placed car. That was Enrique by the looks of it. No, scrap that. We've got the 14th car overall. It was Lolanda who's had an issue and is going slow through sector 2 briefly, but it looks like he's back up to speed now. As Magnus Dahlgren has come into the pit lane to do his second and final pit stop here in this 230-kilometre race around the Nürburgring. Seems to be time is flying here, as are the pit stops. I think most of the teams will be doing 2 pit stops. A handful of them will be doing 1, and no doubt they'll be huffing on fumes when they come through and across the line at the end of the 50 laps of the 230 kilometres. Here's Ben Borman. He's really struggled here this weekend, but he's kept it going, and the good news is it looks like he's actually managed to get whatever was the issue. He may have possibly got it sorted out. Although he's not up to speed exactly, he's consistently running 226s, so I think he's just getting used to the setup here. He might be using this as sort of a test session. He's really dicing it up, though, with the drivers in front of him, because, of course, Stephen Miller and Dahlgren is there as well, isn't it? Sorry, that's Brian Hall just in front of him. Almost tapped the back bumper there of Brian Hall actually going through the previous 2 corners, but he's managed to keep it on the road and not hit the back bumper of Hall, because, of course, he doesn't want to ruin his race here this weekend, because Brian Hall, of course, running in 3rd overall in the pro category. Back with Ross Smith, who's had a rather eventful race so far, but looks to be the second half or possibly even 3rd part of the race looking a little cleaner than it was earlier on today.
Lap 38 then, and Walter de Bruin and Dan Kirby only separated now by 9 seconds, so it really is now about who breaks first in terms of the high pressure situation that these last 14 laps of racing are going to provide with them. Walter de Bruin certainly has the best all-rounder of a car, essentially, with the Rookie Monsters Porsche, definitely able to keep it together for the duration with good speed and good mechanical grip. Kirby's car is not the fastest in a straight line. The CMS Pro Mazda, as into the pits comes Stephen Miller, and Barry DiMarzo is in the pits with him as well. So it's kind of a pit stop race between these 2 cars at this moment in time, and they are the 2 AMA leaders battling away with Felipe Enrique. Big wobble there from Tom Lane, who is now tucked up in front of George Angelidis. There's less than a second between these 2. Tom Lane in the Manta Squid Porsche has a really good chance here on George Angelidis, and is currently running 2nd in pro, so he wants to be careful how he goes about making this overtaking move. We go on board as he now chases down this fabulous Mazda in front of him, but this sort of sit down and beg position of driving that Tom Lane in the Manta Squid Porsche has, it's going to be interesting to see if he can make that ultimate lunge into the inside line of George Angelidis, as both Kirby and Smith are now making pit stops. So now we're going to find out how this all plays out.
And interesting enough there, when you talk about that battle, it looks to me we have a car stationary on the front straightaway by the looks of it. That would be John Mayer, who was 9th before he slowed down, and is now being shown as 12th, and on our screen he's actually moving backwards. No, he's in the pit lane, so a little bit of a blip in the system there. It's showing that he's on track, and that's the reason we had the yellow in sector 1, but he's actually in the pit lane, so that was quite interesting, that situation going on there. 2nd overall is shown as come in, so it's Dan Kirby who's come in. Walter de Bruin is now the race leader, so it looks to be, I think all drivers might have to come in and do 2 pit stops here, and I think Tom Lane might stretch it out as much as possible here, because he was the last driver to come in. When did Tom Lane actually come into the pit lane? He came in on lap 26. So he came in 1 lap after the halfway point. Yes, he should be able to go to the end as long as he's very conservative with that fuel towards the end of the race. That's going to be quite interesting for Lane if he gets locked in a battle, because if he does, he's going to have an issue, because the last thing he wants to do is run out of fuel. We saw that last week at Road America. Essentially the lead of the category went to a completely different driver. They were battling, but unfortunately the leader of the class had to come into the pit lane to top up on fuel, or else he just wouldn't have made it across the line, and that was on the last lap of the race as well. The yellow flag still showing in sector 1 for John Mayer, unless we have another car that's stationary somewhere else. No, we don't. It's still showing that John Mayer is there on the front straightaway. I believe he's got going again. I don't think he's still currently in the pit lane. He can't be in the pit lane for that long, as George Angelidis has come in as well from the Purist category. And the third overall, there he is. He's come in to serve his second and final pit stop. And in the last, it will be a last 11 lap lunge essentially for the lead, sorry, a 10 lap lunge, sorry, for the lead in class. And that is John Mayer in the pit garage. So unfortunately, all is well with John Mayer. He did have some issues by the looks of it, so not retired yet, but he is still showing us in the race, but he's in the pit garage. Now, I would say this is good news for Ben Borman, because he'd get a position on track there, wouldn't he? Because he's circling way down the order, but unfortunately, he's 34 laps behind John Mayer at the moment, so unfortunately, he would not be getting a 15th place finish. Now, it appears second place at the moment is, that's Dan Kirby. He's gone purple through sector 1 with a 22.317. He is just under a minute behind Walter de Bruyn, but he's gone through that first sector 0.7 of a second faster than Walter de Bruyn did on that lap. Let's keep an eye on what he does through sector 2 here. He's working his way through. Can he go purple again? He does already have the fastest lap of the race, which is said early on, with a 1:29.626. As he's across the line now, that's the timing line that would be, because Ben Borman is being shown as second for some reason. What's happened there? How has Ben Borman gone from 15th to second in just one lap?
There's definitely some kind of issue going on there. Definitely some kind of issue. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
For Borman, it's very good news. I don't think Dan Kirby's going to be very happy about that, though.
No, indeed. Certainly we've lost Meyer and Mountjoy according to that graphic. And all of a sudden, Ben Borman is appearing in second position. I don't quite know what's happening there. But with 11 laps to go, that seems to be what the timing screen is telling us. Walter de Bruyn in front of Dan Kirby, and Ben Borman has now dropped off the pace. So yeah, there we go. So it has now corrected itself. That makes a lot of sense. Walter de Bruyn, Dan Kirby, and then Tom Lane ahead of Ross Smith and Brian Hall. Timon Subic and Philippe Henrique, who is still leading in the AM category after all of that. Fascinating situation. 10 laps to go, and Walter de Bruyn hanging on to the lead from Dan Kirby by about half a minute or so. Although that gap is coming down significantly when the opportunities arise, as Dan Kirby manages to lap Timon Subic, and that puts the Kowalski Sauber down in 7th overall, of course. Dan Kirby 2nd overall at this point. And there is Tom Lane, who is currently 2nd in his category, who is of course the pro category. So Tom Lane still having a really solid run here. Smith running in 4th overall ahead of Brian Hall, and then Ben Borman is going to be deleted from that top 6 because he is of course out of the race. Subic therefore will inherit 6th position from Henrique, Angelidis, Whitehead and Dahlgren, and then Miller, DeMarzo, who is showing up as being in pit road, although that is now no longer the case. Gilles Lalonde, and then Lubos Rosolanka, who I think has just come into the pits. John Mayer seems to have gone back out again. So Mayer has lost a couple of laps, but is deciding and electing to try and finish the race. So John Mayer hoping to score some valid points at the end of all of this. A very interesting situation. Tom Lane, though, finds himself 2nd in class, 3rd overall.
I think we're going to expect Walter de Bruyn to come in the pit lane shortly, because if you look at the previous pit stops, so with the first pit stops, Walter de Bruyn and Dan Kirby came in. Dan Kirby came on lap 20, and Walter de Bruyn came in on lap 23. So that would mean in the next... Oh, there we go. Walter de Bruyn is in the pit lane right as we speak. He's coming now for his 2nd and final pit stop of the race. Now, this is the moment Dan Kirby will be pouncing. Now, he's currently working his way out of Sector 2. He should have enough time to catch Walter de Bruyn while he's currently in the pit lane. You've got a yellow in Sector 2. well, sector 1 as Dan Kirby goes quicker through sector 2. He's gone purple. Now he's going purple through sector 1 as Walter De Bruyn is going out of the pit lane. Has he got enough time? Well, he's out already. Where is Dan Kirby? Was that him in the background? Yes. No, it wouldn't have been. That would have been... No, it would have been... excuse me. That would have been Dan Kirby behind him on the straightaway. But unfortunately for Dan Kirby, despite him going quick at the ball with a 1:29.247, he will not take the lead from Walter De Bruyn, and he's going to have to try his hardest now to catch up to Walter De Bruyn and take away the lead here overall. Because, of course, Walter De Bruyn leads in the Pro category, but, of course, Dan Kirby wants to be leading in the Purist category and overall here, as that is what De Bruyn is doing at the moment. The gap is 10 seconds, and it's coming down, and it's coming down fast as well. Of course, colder tyres on Dan Kirby's, on the Porsche 962, the team Rookie Monsters Walter De Bruyn car is going to be in the hands of Dan Kirby. But can he catch him? It is floating around 10 seconds, the gap between the two of them. We're going to have some fantastic battles going on now in the final 8 laps of the race here at the Nürburgring. The 230 kilometers coming to a close soon. It feels like we only started the race 1 lap ago. But here we are on the closing stages, the final third of the race. This man right here, Tom Lane, is going to owe us another pit stop. Now let's have a look at when he came into the pit stop last, because he was the last of the drivers to come in, and it would have been a lap around the later parts of it. He came in at lap 26, so he will have to come in. Well, he should have come in, no way. No, because if we double 26, that'll be 52. So he may actually be good to go to the end of the race. Now,
it's a good chance, isn't there?
Position,
really good chance.
There is a very high chance that he could have done this on 1 stop compared to everyone else's 2 stop. Now he's currently running 3rd overall. He is 50-ish seconds. Well, that time's actually dropping significantly at the moment between himself and Dan Kirby, between the two of them, and that's coming down alarmingly quick as well. Has Dan Kirby got a problem? No, he's still circulating. That was a mighty big drop in the gap between the two of them there. As there is Dan Kirby. He certainly is still circulating and at full speed as well. But he is 8 seconds adrift from Walter De Bruyn. And again, Dan Kirby's gone quick. He's gone purple again through sector 1. What can he do through this second sector? As he's coming across the line now, through this corner and be across that timing line. He's gone purple again. This is a mighty quick lap here from Dan Kirby. If he can get through the traffic in front of him, hopefully he doesn't meet them in the final corner of the race, but this is going to be a mammoth lap here from Dan Kirby. Keeps it all really tight to that final corner. He's going to go purple again. Does he? He's across the line. Come on, timing sheet. Yo, he did. A 1:28.908. The first 1:28 as well here at the Nürburgring. Dan Kirby's done it. He officially is the fastest man out there by almost a full second. And he's brought the gap down to under 5 seconds that time round. What a lap that was. As we see...
So Felipe Enrique still trying to work his way forward onto the back of Timon Suvic. Still looking good in terms of a class victory for the Porsche. But this is very tight between these two. Timon Suvic still trying to hold on to it. A little bit of a twitch there from Felipe Enrique, who's desperately trying to prove his might against the Kowalski Sauber. You can just see the Sauber's got such good straight line speed. But it's in the corners where the Porsche is able to gain a lot of time. There's a very good demonstration of that. Timon Suvic backing down off the pace a little bit there, and Felipe Enrique able to get a massive amount of time gained back. They come up through the chicane. I've got a feeling there's still one big move coming from Felipe Enrique. He's got to be careful he doesn't throw this away. Dives there up the inside of Suvic, and they actually bang doors as they go through. Suvic has to let Felipe Enrique by. A little bit forceful from Felipe Enrique, not for the first time in this race.
And just as when we thought everything sort of died down and was becoming a little bit calmer, we had more contact there at the corners. A good thing they didn't take each other off, because that would have been catastrophic for both of these drivers here. But as you said, Henrik is the leader in class, and here on the inside goes Timon Suvik again. Of course, Suvik in the Purist category makes quick work of the Porsche, works his way past, nice and clean there on the exit of the final corner. Across the line they come, and they've changed positions. We're now into the final laps here of the race. Here's George Angelidis. He's 8th overall, and is he 4th in class? Yes, he is, behind Timon Suvik. So it looks like Suvik got the jump on him in the second round of pit stops here at the Nürburgring. So unfortunately, George Angelidis is going to have to fight quite hard here if he wants to be in a podium finishing position. Here's Dahlgren, also 4th overall in class. 9th overall in the race as well. He's a bit further back from the back bumper of Brian Hall, who's inside the top 5. So a long way to go for him. Jason Whitehead rounding out the top 10. He currently sits 5th in class, just behind Dahlgren actually. And Dahlgren's not too far up the road either, so we could have a battle here for 5th position. Now into the pit lane, interesting enough, has come DiMarzio, as we're looking at Ross Smith here. This is quite a late pit stop as well for DiMarzio. Now officially 5 laps. Oh, that was the Sauber that went off there briefly. Quick trip into the gravel just to ensure that it's still there, it's still working. Quick in and out.
This is the next interesting battle out on the circuit. You've got Brian Hall under some pressure from the Nookie Peugeot of Ross Smith. And these two are not in the same category, but there's certainly still a fire in the belly of Ross Smith, who wants to try and take on Brian Hall, see if he can find his way past. Could be very interesting as they get their way through. You can see the class battles going on. 5 laps remaining for Wouter de Bruin in the lead of the race, but the gap between him and Dan Kirby is only 3 seconds or so. So there's not a lot to choose between them. This could come down to a nail-biting finish between these two drivers. Ross Smith, though, gaining a lot of ground on Brian Hall. There's not much to choose between Wouter de Bruin and Dan Kirby up in front now. According to my timing screen, it's only about 3 seconds between the two, and with only 4 laps remaining after this one, there's every chance that Dan Kirby and the Mazda... Look, there it is. You can see the gap for yourselves. There's not much in it between Dan Kirby and Wouter de Bruin at all, and we only have 4 laps to go at the end of this one.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting final 4 laps here. I'm keeping an eye on Tom Lane's times as well to see if there's any significant drop in sector times, because of course he was one of the last drivers to come to the pit lane on lap number 26. We're on lap 47, so he last came in 21 laps ago. Now, he is one of the only drivers that could take it all the way to the end on just a single pit stop. But I can imagine he's going to start having to slow down sometime soon, but he's going to not want to slow down too much, because his closest rival of Brian Hall is shown as only 6 seconds behind him. Now, that gap is going up and down. It's fluctuating quite a bit here. Now, it doesn't seem to be that Tom Lane is losing time at the moment. He's still up to speed. He's still now, showing 0.2 of a second faster than Brian Hall is through the first sector. So he's still up to full speed. But how long is it going to be until he starts conserving that fuel that he's got on board at the moment? He's got green again through sector 2, a little bit slower, about 0.3 of a second slower, actually 0.5 of a second slower actually through that second sector compared to his closest rival. As again, we're looking at George Angelidis here, but going back to Tom Lane, he doesn't seem to be slowing down anytime soon. I do hope he can do it on one stop, and it'd be quite interesting if he does, as that was Ben Borman by the looks of it, who's come out of the pit lane. It looked like he got a couple of laps back, but unfortunately still drama's going on for Ben Borman, as George Angelidis has taken 3rd in class in the Purist category. Now, there was quite a big gap actually separated two, and does Suvik have a problem, because he's starting to lose time? Well, he's dropped to 1.3 seconds back, but he was not under any pressure from George Angelidis. Now, I wonder what the issue might be here for Timon Suvik. He doesn't seem to be like off the pace, although he did have a very he's had a very slow sector 2 time. He's 8 seconds slower, so he's had an off somewhere, and it's cost him quite significantly. He was slow through sector 1 as well by 1.3 seconds to our race leader. But Timon Suvik unfortunately has lost a podium finishing position. Good news for George Angelidis, But for Timon, it's the other end of the spectrum there. As Ross Smith works his way through, and again, he's not the one that we're looking out for, is he? Because it's Tom Lane that we're keeping an eye on, isn't it? Because Ross Smith currently sits in second overall in the Purist category behind Dan Kirby. Walter de Bruin still leads by only 0.6 of a second, though, from Dan Kirby. There's Tom Lane on our screen right now. And is Ross Smith looking for a way through? No, Ross Smith has shown us a lap down to Tom Lane because there's a Brian Hall car somewhere in the mix between them. There is the lead battle. And we have only, well, this time round will be 2 laps to go. And it's going to be, well, 2 laps to go for Dan Kirby if he wants to take the lead of the race. There's about a car length separating the two of them now that are on the straightaway, and this is what Dan Kirby did to take the lead earlier on. He's going to look to the inside, doesn't think he tries to fake a move to the outside to try and spook the race leader, but Walter de Bruin, a very cool head on the shoulders there, keeps Dan Kirby at bay, runs a little wide there through the second corner, but keeps Dan Kirby behind him more importantly. So, 2 laps to go. Walter de Bruin, Dan Kirby. Here are your race leaders in 2 separate categories. There's Dan Kirby again looking to the inside there, but Walter de Bruin shuts the door and denies it. Oh! A little bit loose there through the corner for Dan Kirby. That could have gone all wrong.
My goodness, this is tense. This is tense right down to the wire between these two. They've only got a lap and a half left of this. Kirby, full chat on wheel spin as he comes out of the hairpin, trying to charge his way back up the hill. Walter de Bruin desperately trying to find that little bit of extra to get clear of Dan Kirby. This is going down to the wire, and neither of them are going to back down from this. Both drivers throwing everything at every apex, waiting for the other to make a mistake. Kirby having to correct the radius through on the top there, out of the chicane, and now they come down towards Vidal, and this is going to be a last of the late breakers scenario as to who nails the entry to the last lap best.
Here we go, running the ball with Dan Kirby, using as much of the runoff area as possible there. Actually, there's no runoff area. Oh, that's alarmingly close. They're very late on the brakes, but look at the mechanical grip on that Mazda. How much better it is through the corners compared to the leader's car there, the Porsche 962 out in front. No, it's not a Porsche, is it? Yes, it is a Porsche 962. Around the outside goes Dan Kirby. This is what he tried to do last time, but it hasn't paid off. Getting close there, trying to force an error out of Walter de Bruin, but he's not going to do it there in the first corner. What's he going to do now through the second sector and the third sector? Is now or never on the final lap. They're going to go side by side, and they're just about. Walter de Bruin says ahead, but Dan Kirby on the inside. Ooh, this is getting tense. This is getting really tense. Pants are becoming a darker shade as we speak here for both of these drivers, especially Dan Kirby. He's really, really pushing it here.
So now it's all about Dan Kirby, where he chooses to place the car. Walter de Bruin defends to the inside line. He's only going to get one chance, and de Bruin slices across on Dan Kirby. Will not let him have the position. Both drivers leading in the Pro and Purist categories. Oh, it's a very tricky situation. Oh my goodness, a really tight tussle, and now they've got a slower car in front of them. This could really tighten things up, and Walter de Bruin, he's got to be so careful. He's got to choose the right moment to lap Stephen Miller in the Speed Details Jaguar, who gets out of the way, but they both trip up over the curbs. This is going to be on the acceleration in the slipstream. Dan Kirby trying to close up on Walter de Bruin. Can he get there to the braking zone? I don't think so. He's going to have to hope that de Bruin messes it up in the Vidal chicane, and he does get a little bit of a wide trajectory. Kirby's going to throw everything at it, skates through, but he's not going to get there unless he sprints out of the final turn. He's going to get better on acceleration. It's going to be so tight to the line, but it will be de Bruin who just beats Dan Kirby over the line. That race had absolutely everything.
What a fantastic finish there for those two. If only there was one more lap to go for Dan Kirby, what he could have done. What an astonishing race that was. Here's Brian Hall, and he's got Ben Bourbon behind him, which is Tom Lane, who I'm amazed will come across the line. And I presume there are just fumes floating around the engine there at the moment. The engine is probably going to start spluttering somewhere towards the final parts of the track, but Tom Lane has managed to do 230 kilometers on just 2 tanks of fuel. The rest of the field have done 2 pit stops, so that's 3 tanks of fuel, but Tom Lane looks to be doing it on just 2. What a fantastic drive and strategy as well, and he'll come across the line second in class as well, which is a mighty valiant effort because Brian Hall is significantly further back, and across the line, hat tip to Tom Lane here who finishes second in class. Here's
That's
Jason
mighty.
Whited. He was in the pit lane at the end apparently as well.
Well, that's absolutely mighty from Tom Lane. Very impressive point there. Very impressive second position. It's going to be Brian Hall that comes through in third place in the pro category. Ross Smith will get second, although George Angelidis, you're absolutely right, does seem to finish the race in the pits in the Purist category. Enrique is going to end up as the victor. Unless, of course, George Angelidis was one of the very first to cross the line. That could be the reason why he's showing up as the pit lane. But Enrique somehow came through to the victory in front of Stephen Miller and Barry DiMarzo, with Myron Mountjoy, of course, retiring from the race earlier on. But what a result for Wouter de Bruin, just about hanging on from Dan Kirby. And on this occasion at the Nürburgring, Pro beats Purist, but doesn't beat him by much, 0.2 of a second. It's one of the closest finishes we've ever had.
What a fantastic finish as well it was. So the winner overall and in the pro category Wouter de Bruin from Tom Lane and Brian Hall, their top three. Then Dan Kirby, Ross Smith and George Angelidis in the Purist category, from Enrique, Miller and DiMarzio in the top three for the AM category. Of course, we'll get some final words with the some drivers there, as we see Ben Borman unfortunately faced the wrong direction. Just hasn't been his day at all. As you said, we'll try and get some final words in from some of our podium finishers and of course our overall winners as well. As I see Wouter de Bruin is currently waiting for us to bring him into the booth. We can probably get a quick word in with our overall race winner, of course, the winner in pro as well.
Wow, what a fantastic rundown. And we're going to have quite the stories to talk with from our leading men. They've been absolutely sensational from the outset. And that race between Wouter de Bruin and Dan Kirby, just absolutely amazing through to the end. What a terrific run it was, and such amazing drama. We'll try and bring in those drivers to tell us all about it. What an incredible performance. So both Dan Kirby and Wouter de Bruin are now on standby in the booth. We'll try and bring them in. But, well, absolutely sensational racing. Unfortunately, I'm not in a position to do so. I did try to bring the drivers in, so that might need to be our assistant, Phil Stocks, who helps us out with that one. But certainly two amazing drivers who have given us a thrilling and spellbinding battle right to the end of proceedings. It really has been a sensational challenge between our top two racers, the winners in the Pro and Purist category. But it's the Purist that has to concede to the Pro on this particular occasion, as Wouter de Bruin just about hung on there in front of Dan Kirby. And we can now speak to Wouter de Bruin after a brilliant drive. Wouter, right to the very end, there was 0.2 of a second between you and Dan Kirby. That's one of the best, the final two laps that we've seen in VWSC this year. How much hard work was that race for you? That looked absolutely amazing.
Yeah, these cars are really tough to drive on your own. So whilst I was driving my second stint, basically alone on track, I was sweating. So now at the end, with Daniel White behind me, now I'm drenched.
So obviously you had all that pressure all the way through, and you had to really try and sustain it. I mean, this is a difficult circuit to get right as well. So just tell us about, the middle phase when you were trying to make the tires continuously by, when you were trying to make the fuel strategy work in your favor.
Yeah, the strategy was, I think, key here because I changed tires from the first stop. Daniel did at the second stop. So that gave me the chance to close down a bit. And I knew at his second pit stop, if he would change tires, it would be 20 seconds extra. And he probably had to take on a little more fuel than I did. So I knew I had a good chance of getting ahead. And that was what happened in the end. But the gap was a bit bigger than I expected. So then at the end, I knew he would catch me, but I saw it was only with 2 laps to go. I think, okay, I can make that.
That was absolutely stunning. Chris, I'm sure you've got one or two things to ask Wouter after a stunning race.
Yeah, it was, well, mainly is how you played the speed advantage. You saw that Dan Kirby was trying to get through on the inside on turn 1 in the last 2 laps there. How did you manage to keep him at bay? Because it seemed to be it was sector 1 where Dan Kirby was slightly outperforming you there.
Yeah, he was really late on the brakes there, and I think quicker in the sector 1 all the time. It's also where he passed me the first time, so in that case I had a bit of a warning for the end. So I increased my turbo boost. I knew I just had enough fuel left to make it with more turbo. And as you probably have seen, I just completely depend on the inside, as it's really hard to go around the outside there. And that seemed to do the trick for at least 2 laps.
Just stunning stuff. Really was exciting right from the start, Walter. Thank you so much for the entertainment. Pro beats Purist. Always a nice feather in the cap. Good job.
Thanks, guys. It was fantastic.
Let's see if we can grab a word with Dan Kirby after his fantastic run in the Purist category. We thought for a long time it was going to be a victory in the end for Dan Kirby, almost doing so overall. And of course, the class victory will be very satisfying indeed for Dan Kirby. We'll try and bring him into the room now so that we can have a word with our our Purist winner, Dan Kirby, doing a fantastic job in the Lucky Strike Mazda. And considering he had a car which was not as fast as some of his opponents in a straight line, he really did maximize the opportunity to battle away. Hopefully Dan will join us in the broadcast booth very shortly indeed. Unfortunately, my permissions don't give me the right of veto to do that. So hopefully that'll get corrected very soon indeed. There he is, Dan Kirby. Makes his way into the booth. Thanks for giving us a bit of a nail biter, mate. I mean, right to the end of the race, we were already having a bit of an exciting show of it. And then you come along with two laps to go and decide to give us an even bigger thrill fest. That was nice.
Yeah, that was intense.
So tell us about, did you always feel that you were going to have the time to get that sort of battle out of Walter? Or do you feel that you just ran out of time to really make full advantage of it?
Yeah, my winning strat was actually to just stay out and triple stint tires, but I wanted to make it interesting, so I took tires at the last stop and knew I'd have to pass them again, but looks like I just had too short of time left.
I mean, if you'd have given us like maybe 1 or 2 laps more, maybe you could have edged a little bit more of a mistake out of Walter to really try and maximize the opportunity, but you were right there for the taking. And of course, in terms of the championship fight, another victory in class, that's so big at this stage.
Yeah, I didn't want to it didn't really matter since we're like different classes, but you still want to fight for that overall anyway.
You're all about the pride, aren't you? I can tell you're all about the pride on that one, which is fair enough. All good. Chris, anything to wax lyrical with Dan?
Yeah, so with 10 laps to go, you started to get quicker and quicker as the time got closer and closer to the end of the race. Obviously, you had less fuel on board, so obviously you're getting quicker, you're getting lighter and anything like that. How much of the strategy then was playing out to the way you wanted it to be? Because you went fast of all, I think, with 4 laps to go, and then you started to dwindle ever so slightly off the pace. Not exceptionally off the pace, you were still there with him. But how close were you running to basically running out of fuel?
Very close. I think I had like half a liter left at the end, I think.
So if it was the case that we'd have 1 lap to go, you probably wouldn't have been able to make it on the inside, because there were some very brave moves that you were making there.
Yeah, that was really close.
Fantastic. I think both our drivers are totally and utterly worn out after a fantastic race battle. Great job, Dan. Thanks very much indeed. And I'm sure that next time out, you'll be straight back on the pace again. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Terrific. Right. Well, that is going to conclude things for us here in the Virtual World Sports Car Championship. A really stunning race battle here in the 230 kilometers of the Nürburgring. But there is still more to come in the 2022 calendar. We are going to return back to the greats from the hypercars and GTs. Next time out, there's going to be 2 weeks of gap before we continue our motorsport calendar for 2022. Still plenty of great hypercars and 1991 sports cars to come for the remainder of this season. Chris, it is just building to a crescendo as our title fights really start to increase.
It's starting to get more and more exciting and the races progress, but we're getting closer and closer to the end of the season. The championship battles are heating up through all of the classes that we're racing. and it's only going to get better from here.
Thank you, Chris. A massive thank you to everybody at CMS. Once again, great racing battles. Thanks to the guys at Storm Gang Simulations as well for giving us the entertainment that they do. I'm Jake Sanson. On behalf of all of us, thank you very much indeed for watching here at the 230 Nürburgring kilometers. We're going to have some more great racing to come 2 weeks from now when VWSC continues.